Up. Say what's up in the chat as you guys come in. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Friday night. We're about to get into these news clips for the daily live stream. Excited to be with you guys. Happy Friday. Tap in, tap in. When you come in, make sure that you say what's up in the chat. Make sure you say where you are watching from. Show your support. Make sure that you are interactive in the chat. Do me a favor. I do not ban or censor you guys from my chat. But please do not disrespect my mods, my subscribers, or my supporters. That is the first and fastest thing that'll get you banned out of my chat. Other than that, please interact with each other. Share your opinion. Say where you guys are watching from. Most of all, hit that like button because that helps the channel out a lot. Helps the video out a lot. Share the live stream for me. And yeah, hashtag let's crack the algorithm. All right, guys. So first up, we got a Christian clip. That's how we usually start around these streets. We start out with a Christian clip, giving Jesus some glory. We got Aaron Page. Shout out to Aaron Page, a channel favorite. We react to Aaron on the channel often here. Aaron is covering tonight I Show Speed on his African tour. On his, I believe he's in, I think he's in South Africa right now. I've been watching this tour. I'm familiar with I Show Speed. I'm familiar with his channel, with the tour that he's doing. One of the biggest YouTube streamers out right now, if not the biggest. He's traveling around Africa, and he decided to do this and live stream these places that he goes to because he wants people to vicariously be able to live through him, which I think is pretty cool. I think he's done a great job so far. He's encountered some racism, yes, in the continent of Africa, which I think is crazy. But of course, it's going to be the part where the Europeans colonized most of it, right? So where the light skins think that they better than the chocolates, is that type of thing. But he's already experienced racism in Africa, but also an abundance of love, great welcomings. Like, it's been a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, people's eyes have really been open to the continent of Africa and what type of country it is. I guess, like, based on the way America promotes things about Africa, people thought that this continent was poor. This is something that I was already made privy to this years ago. I know that Africa is a beautiful continent. It's not a continent I have gotten to visit. I've been lots of places being on active duty in the Marine Corps. I have not been to Africa. But I still would like to visit one day. I just love what I Show Speed has done. Like, it's been pretty great. Like, I've watched almost all of his tours. So just so you guys know, I've watched almost all of these live streams. Most of the time when I Show Speed is live and he's in Africa and he has the IRL going, like, my man has, I think on last Friday when I was at work watching right before I got off, it was like 12 o'clock in the afternoon and he had 170,000 people watching. So I actually watched I Show Speed hit 50 million live, and he did that in Africa, standing on top of some type of it was some type of tall SUV truck. I don't know if it was an Escalade or a Tahoe or what it was, but he had his entourage out there. They gave him a cake. You know, he hit 50 million subscribers, so shout out to I Show Speed. Like, I really rock out with that guy. I love what he's doing. He's a young man traveling, doing great things for our community. So shout out to I Show Speed, man. 50 million subscribers. That ain't easy to do. Just anybody ain't hitting those numbers. So, yeah, Aaron Page, nonetheless, covered I Show Speed in Africa, and he is engaging in this ritual. And this ritual happens to be a ritual that people believe is occultish and it is demonic. I'm not sure how much I Show Speed knows about this, but people are trying to warn him, telling him not to really like dib and dab in this type of thing. So let's get into how Aaron Page covered this and what our man Aaron Page had to say. Let's jump right in.
Just trust me when I'm telling you this. On your to-do list of things to do, these videos for years. It's involved in West African voodoo worship, okay? Witchcraft, demonic worship. But
My fault, chat. I wanted to rewind it for you guys. I want to watch it from the beginning.
I Show Speed participated in a demonic ritual during his African tour, okay? And I'm kind of surprised how many people are not speaking about this, although these videos have gotten millions and millions of views. I want to show you guys how this is demonic and also how this is tied to demonic worship that even celebrities are involved in, okay? Let's hop into this video, watch it, and react to it. Before we do me a quick favor. Hit that like button for the algorithm so that this video can reach more people like yourself. I truly appreciate you guys. Let's hop in.
He's moving! Wait, how they moving? Are these robots?
But there's no one. There's spirits.
They're spirits? What the heck? Oh my God! What the? Yo! How is he moving like that? Oh no, buddy!
Okay, so this is the Zang Beto dance. We've seen many videos. I've seen these videos for years. It's involved in West African voodoo worship, okay? Witchcraft, demonic worship. A lot of people say, well, there's been people that have been exposed, and there were people inside of these created things, right? But there is a lot of videos that actually show no one inside of them, but these strange dolls that are inside of them that are making these things move. And I'm going to show you that video too. I just want to say this for Christians as well. I don't think that any of this is going to cause demonic entities.
Okay, so some of this I'm familiar with, right? But he just said straight, he said the small dolls. I'm like, oh man, here we go. I grew up around a lot of stuff, like especially like my Spanish side of the family. They dib and dab and some things that people would consider witchcraft, right? Sometimes they got like little altars set up in their houses. You can see like little rabbit's foots and little chicken's feet and all kind of things like that I grew up around that I just don't want to talk about right now while we're watching this, because it's bringing back it's bringing back a lot of memories for me based on what he's saying. So I'm interested to see this part of West African voodoo worship. I'm actually not familiar with, and I'm familiar with a good amount of it. So I'm curious to see how this is going to turn out. I'm like, he said dolls. Oh my gosh.
To jump on you or to follow you or anything like that. I don't believe that any of these demons have any power, any more power than what we have, because we have the Holy Spirit. So the Bible says greater is him that is in us than he that is in the world. So I don't think watching this is going to cause any of that. Okay. But I do want to show you, this is him actually dancing with these demonic spirits. That's what I'm going to call them, demonic spirits. Okay, let's look at this. And then I have some other videos proving that this is actually like real demonic stuff happening. All right, let's go ahead and hop in. I remember when I first saw these videos, I used to think that it was all fake as well. This video right here, I don't know how if this is fake, it would be impossible for them to pull this off. Okay, it looks real. I think it's real. I think there's real demonic worship. I think there are real demons involved in this. The reason I say that is because of the religion that this is in is tied to the Yoruba religion, which a lot of celebrities are involved in. Celebrities like Skrilla, in the Ocean and Orishan religion. Beyonce's sister is in this. Solange knows.
Oh yeah, as soon as he started saying that, the ocean part, I remember that. Yeah, there are a lot of celebrities involved in this, the Yoruba. Oh man, this is what this is. This is crazy.
Taraji P. Henson, someone who was pretty much saying that she was getting blacklisted in Hollywood, not getting the money that she was worth, although she was putting in a lot of work. And she was crying out to the Hollywood executives, all of a sudden takes a trip to Bali, a spiritual trip to Bali, and then starts to talk about African deities and spiritual worship involving the Yoruba religion. And then she gets the BET Awards in 2024. There's a lot of celebrities that are into this worship. And I believe it's real. I believe that what they are doing is truly demonic. It's not a God that is in the sense of Jesus Christ and Yahweh, but they're lowercase gods as in demons. Okay. Let me show you this real quick. There's a lot of people, even some Christians, that think that this kind of worship is not demonic and that it's just ancestral spirituality. But the truth about it is that you're not worshiping ancestors. Ancestors are not guiding you. Those are demons, okay? Demons are guiding you. Your ancestors are dead, okay? And whether or not they believe in Jesus Christ, they're going to be in one or two places. And that's just the truth. Now, I get it. Everyone's going to have their own religion, but it's the goal of a Christian to call this stuff out, because some people may be confused and think that the stuff that's going on is godly, is good spiritual stuff. But in reality, it's demon worship. Okay. So it says, much like the saints of Catholicism, which is already crazy in itself, the Yoruba Orishas work as the intermediaries between men and the supreme creator and the rest of the divine world. While they often act on behalf of mortals, the Orishas sometimes work against humans and cause problems for them. There are a number of different kinds of Orishas in the Yoruba religion. Many of them are said to have been present when the world was created, and others were once human but transcended into a state of semi-divine existence. Some Orishas appear in the form of a natural feature, rivers, mountains, trees, and other environmental markers. The Orishas exist in a way much like human beings. They party, eat, and drink, love, and marry, and enjoy music. In a way, the Orishas serve as a reflection of mankind itself. So that's why they believe that these, inside of these Zangbeto forms or things, they believe that there's something in there, something real, and it could possibly be something real, but it's not what you think it is. If there is something in there, it's definitely demonic. It is not an ancestor. It's not some type of it's not a god, as in the one and true God. The only thing that this could possibly be is something that was created long ago, which are angels who rebelled against God, and those angels created children with women called the Nephilim, and the Nephilim died a long time ago, and the Nephilim are what we call demons, and these demons is what they worship. I do want to say that I like IShowSpeed. Okay, I don't hate him. I'm not hating on him. Okay, I understand that he has a lot of fame, that he's grown from his days of doing streaming and stuff like that. But I do feel like we have to call this stuff out. And IShowSpeed, just because he has a large following and he's traveling the world and everyone's watching him, does not mean he's different from any other human being, and that every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, one way or another. And so I believe that it's important, again, to remind IShowSpeed that there is an afterlife, and that this life is only temporary, and the things of this.
See, I have no choice but to believe that there's some sort of demonic possession around that. Especially the last clip that Aaron showed with the gentleman kind of throwing water, on a small doll. And then, like, him and another gentleman places this big fixture over it. And then it just starts to kind of move by itself. At first, I'm thinking to myself, well, oh, maybe the guy from the other side kind of, like, snuck in underneath. And, like, he went inside and he's doing this. Because Aaron said it, too. He said, when I first saw this, I thought all of this stuff was fake, too. But then I see the guy on the other side, and I'm like, oh, so he's not in there. So I'm like, so it's just the doll in there moving that thing by itself. That's creepy.
World is only temporary. And I'm saying all that because IShowSpeed had a confrontation with a pastor years ago, or maybe a year, maybe 2 years. And he completely neglected this conversation. And I believe that every time that someone who is not living for Christ, who is rejecting Christ, I believe that every time they have a conversation with someone trying to reel them in, That's an opportunity that God has placed in their life for them to see the truth, for everyone to come to the knowledge of the truth, as it says in the Word of God. And I want to show you that interaction that he had with this pastor. Okay, let's check it out.
Fast mode is a new way to work with Agent for when you need precise edits instantly.
Okay.
Are you a Christian?
Am I a Christian? Okay. See, that's a very, great question, you know what I'm saying? But let me ask you this, okay?
No. Answer the question first. It's a great question because a Christian is someone that's repentant of their sins, that doesn't support sexual immorality, that's not walking for fame, but living for Jesus. Someone who's denied themselves, pick up their cross daily and follow me. I'm not against you trying to make money or making good music, but if you're a Christian, you need to repent of your sins. Otherwise, just like any person here, not just you, you'll find yourself in hell.
All right, okay, hold on, wait.
So are you a Christian?
Hey, let me talk, all right?
Are you a Christian?
Okay, first of all, I came here to see Ronaldo. I'm in Manchester right now. You're asking me questions about God, okay? I love God, but...
Just if you...
Hey.
I want to know.
Hey, okay. Let me tell you this. Stop talking to me, sir. Have a nice day.
I thought so. What? I forgot that guy's name. What was his name? I Show Speed. He sped away very quickly when the truth of Jesus Christ was mentioned. Why couldn't he answer the question whether he was a Christian? Why was he so quick?
I actually never saw this clip, so I didn't know that I Show Speed had this I'm familiar with this pastor. I want to say his first name is David, because I've watched him over the years. He actually has been arrested numerous amounts of time for being in a public square and just kind of preaching the gospel. So, God, he had to be somewhere. Where's this guy at? He's usually like in the UK or something like that, I think. I know this pastor. Like, I've seen him out there so many times, and people have advocated for him because he's been arrested. I actually never knew that I Show Speed had that interaction with him. It's interesting, though, because he couldn't answer the question. That's very interesting. He said, I love God, but... And then he just, like, kind of answers it goofy, like, stop talking to me, sir, and walks away. I'm like, that's interesting. I never knew about that interaction.
To acknowledge, or rather affirm, that he could be gay for another man. You see, this man makes provocative videos, they say, for the attention, for whatever it is. His father's a Christian, and he knows what the question was, and he could not answer it. He had to run, because the Bible says light comes into the world. Men loves darkness rather than light, for fear that their deeds will be known. They would rather stay in the dark than into the light. We got to pray for I Show Speed and all the people. We got to pray because they're trading their soul. The Bible says, what will a man give in exchange for their soul?
Okay, so I want to show you guys this verse, 2 Peter 3. And I have to read a little bit because I think it's going to be helpful with what I'm trying to say. But it talks about the day of the Lord when Jesus will judge the world. Okay. And let me read this to you real quick. It says, above all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, where is this coming he promised? Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being, and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. It says this, instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. Okay. God does not want anyone to go to hell. He wants everyone to come to repentance. And that's why we see people that do, not saying that this is I Show Speed, but people that do very evil things, and they live long lives and they live prosperous lives. It's not that you are immediately struck down when you do evil. Okay, but God is patient with everyone, wanting everyone to come to a knowledge of the truth. The truth is Jesus Christ. Okay, it says, but the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. Wanting everyone to come to a people that do, not saying that this is I Show Speed, but people that do very evil things, and they live long lives and they live prosperous lives. It's not that you are immediately struck down when you do evil, okay? But God is patient with everyone, wanting everyone to come to a knowledge of the truth.
I wanted to quote the actual scripture. That's why I went back, because this scripture was one of the very first Bible verses. Most people remember one of the first scripture they memorize on their own, or it comes to them and they're like, oh, that's actually the first scripture that I actually memorized on my own. This was one of the first Bible scriptures I memorized. And I love the way that he's articulating it, because he's pointing out the fact that, you know, the Lord's patience is at work even when people who aren't paying any attention to it don't care about it, they don't realize it, they don't see it. And it's true. It's like, I love the first time I read it that it said that the Lord is not slow the way some count. Like the way we think of like somebody being slow, like, oh, this person's taking too long, or like, you know, this person, like, they're taking their time. You know, it says rather he's patient, right? And he's patient for a reason. It goes on to say why he's patient. So I really love this Bible verse. I love the fact that Aaron went to this one. I didn't get to watch this clip in its entirety, so I didn't know. He usually does pick a good Bible verse, but I didn't know which one he was going to pick this time.
The truth is Jesus Christ. Okay, it says, but the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the day of God and speed its coming. That day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt in the heat. But in keeping with his promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth with righteousness, where righteousness dwells. Okay. And I understand that if you are not Christian, you're not going to understand exactly what's taking place here. But I'm trying to say, for those that may not understand what's taking place, that there's going to be a day where God judges the world. And in the time of Noah, there were many people that lived ungodly lives, and they laughed at Noah as he was building a boat, because it did not rain until the rain came, and they had nowhere to hide, and they were destroyed by it. And I believe that that's a lesson that we can see and say, hey, I don't want to be like them. I don't want to live my life understanding that this world is going to come to an end. I'm going to die one day. I may have to face a judge, even if you don't believe in God. You know who Jesus is by now. You have heard his name. Are you going to make a decision to continue to live life by your own standards and the way you want to live, or are you going to follow Christ? And are you going to receive everlasting life through salvation of Christ by believing in him first? So that same thing has to be said to I Show Speed and everyone else in the world. I'm not making this video, like I said, to get clout or to try to bash I Show Speed. I actually like him. I actually think he's a good guy. But he definitely is diving into demonic witchcraft, and he's putting it out there for the world to see. And no one's speaking about it. No one's saying anything to him about it. And I believe that we should call this stuff out. I believe that we should let people know, hey, this is not just African tradition things. This is actually demonic worship happening right in front of our faces. Okay. And there may be people that even think that they want to be a part of that. They want to experience that. Okay. But they may not understand the truth about what's actually happening. And for I Show Speed, I do think that it's important to show him, hey, you have already been talked and spoken to regarding your faith, regarding where you are going to go when you die. And I think that is the most serious question for all of us. Okay, nobody's perfect, but choosing to be a part of African demonic spirituality and choosing to get angry at a pastor for telling you that you need to relook and rethink about what you're doing in life shows where you're headed. And I think we should pray for IShowSpeed, and we should pray that God would send more people in his path before his day comes. Okay. But it's definitely demonic worship. Unfortunately, it is. All right. I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the Yoruba religion and the things that are tied into it, and even the celebrities that are tied into this religion. Okay. So if you want to see that, it's going to be on my Patreon. So I'll leave a link that you can subscribe to the Patreon in my description. Okay. Let me know how you guys feel about this video in the comment section, okay? If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and hit the post notification bell so you do not miss another video. My name's Aaron Page. I'll catch y'all on the next video. Until next time, I'm out.
This is the quick.
Yo, shout out to Aaron Page. I appreciate him covering that. He's a channel favorite. We react to Aaron a lot, and we're going to continue to. Shout out to IShowSpeed for his African tour. It's been great thus far. A lot of people tuning in. He reached 50 million subscribers, so shout out to him. And yeah, I hope that he does get that guidance in his life, you know, that spiritual authority that can help him, you know, work his way through that, you know, because sometimes we dib and dab in those things, and it's like we might not necessarily mean anything by it, but we might not be aware of like the ramifications. We might not understand what we're inviting into our lives. Like there's a lot of a lack of understanding there when we're doing things like that. So I do hope someone comes into his life and helps him out with that. All right, let's move to the next clip. We got Liberty Vote channel, another channel favorite. Shout out to him. Max Blumenthal warns that a U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran is imminent. Imminent. I don't know how I feel about that word. It's an important word. So let's jump right in. Let's take a look at that.
They're going to try to go in hard as they did in Venezuela, knock out Iran's communication systems, knock out its air defenses, and then move in from there. But that does not guarantee regime change. Iran is not Venezuela. They are now demanding a decapitation strike on Iran's leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as a kind of consolation prize.
Max Blumenthal just warned that a U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran is imminent, despite what we've been told about a stand-down, that Trump and Netanyahu are still planning to strike, and it will probably happen soon. He gets into why he believes this, what his sources from the ground in Iran are telling him about it, and how he thinks it's going to play out. So let's catch that. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Even though this regime change, which I guess was intended to replicate the coup of 1953, failed, just as regime change apparently has failed in Venezuela, is an Israeli and U.S. attack on Iran imminent?
Well, I saw these riots as an extension of the 12-day war, as an effort to revive the hostility toward Iran after the war that was launched by Israel essentially failed, and Trump declared kind of a symbolic victory by bombing Fordo. But that was a way of giving Israel a climb down, because Israel was getting hammered and its cities and strategic sites were getting hit. The reason that Trump not immediately strike, there was this national security meeting about a week ago, and apparently the Israelis said, we're not ready yet for you to go in and strike because our missile defenses are not prepared. And we need you to set up Patriot batteries, to set up the THAAD anti-missile defense systems, because we can't defend ourselves with those Patriot batteries that you paid for. So there was a delay. They sent carrier groups. There are over 100 in-air stratotankers, in-air refueling stratotankers in the region now. All the assets are in place. They kind of, today was the day they were put in place. And yesterday at Davos, Peter Orszag, who I think was Treasury Secretary under Obama, former Goldman Sachs banker, he's at some new firm. His wife is a overtly Zionist CNN host. He said that he's hearing through, in his words, indirect sources that the U.S. will strike Iran soon.
because otherwise I might be stuck with a stack of bills and debt for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it seems to be the case, and I'm with Max. This just seems to be the latest phase of a grand propaganda scheme to undermine the Iranian regime that we've been hearing all along. At first, it was, Israel's just attacking Iran. They're in their backyard. They're a threat to them. We're not getting involved. And then in the 12-day war, it's like, no, we are getting involved. We're giving them intelligence and weaponry. Then we are bombing Iran. It's just for their nuclear facilities, they told us, even though Tulsi Gabbard had said in her annual threat summary they didn't even reconstitute their nuclear weapons program. And ironically, Iran has nuclear weapons, but either way, the United States bombed Iran, bailed Israel out because apparently they had depleted their supplies. Iranian ballistic missiles were getting through the Iron Dome, and they were unprepared to continue fighting. Well, I kind of like that because Trump celebrated this. We set them back decades, he said. We set back their nuclear program decades. But then he shifted it to, when talking with Netanyahu around New Year's Eve, he said, well, if they rebuild their ballistic missiles, that's reason for us to strike. If they kill protesters, that's reason to strike. And then just the other day, he said, if they try anything, they're going to be struck. And Max is right. They moved in all sorts of assets into the region. I think this attack is going to happen sooner rather than later.
And I think the inertia is so strong, the preponderance of pressure from Israel on Donald Trump, who they essentially own through Miriam Adelson, to do something, that Trump is going to try some kind of decapitation strike. And that's what all the Iranian monarchist psychos who are now frustrated that their crown prince, or what I would call the Potomac, Maryland-based clown prince, Reza Pahlavi, is not going to be sent back into Tehran to take power. Trump has poured cold water on that. They are now demanding a decapitation strike on Iran's leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as a kind of consolation prize. And honestly, I can't think of anything that the U.S. can do militarily that will actually lead towards regime change unless they do something like that, and he will be quickly replaced. But that's where I see, through my indirect sources.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how any regime change takes place unless there's lots of well-armed rebels willing to storm Tehran and take the regime in conjunction with the bombing, or you have boots on the ground, the most horrifying prospect that no American patriot wants, because we've experienced those regime change operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, and our military stretched thin, and causing 5 million total deaths in the war on terror, and $12 trillion down the drain on that for the sake of Israel in many of these affairs, in Syria, Libya, Iraq. I mean, obviously there were neocons in the United States that had pushed for that even before 9/11 and finally got all the political capital they needed to unleash that. But now we have the same possibility here on the table. It's just a terrifying prospect for men and women in our military to go overseas for the sake of the Israeli genocidal regime to do another regime change when Iran isn't even a threat to the United States. Totally unacceptable. It cannot be accepted, but it does seem like...
Yeah, and it's like, do you have people saying that Iran's not a threat? But as long as President Trump thinks it is, that this is what we're going to be dealing with, right? You have people wondering, why does he think this even though Iran's not necessarily doing anything? Or why does he think this after he's already bombed Iran? Or why? And it's like, then you have some people saying, oh, Israel has a push behind it. That's the only reason why he's willing to do this or think like this. So I do think that there are, I think there's a little bit of both at hand. It's hard to tell, but I know as long as President Trump feels like Iran is a threat, which he has stated this numerous amounts of times, especially in the very beginning, of his presidency, that of his second term, that he's going to deal with them accordingly. So as far as he's concerned, he says, Iran, they can either do things the easy way or they can do things the hard way. And I remember at one point in time early on, during his second term, he used the word obliterated. So, and that was in reference to Iran. So he's not joking here about things like that. He's being pretty serious.
It might happen soon.
The momentum going.
Chris, let's play Orzag, the former Treasury Secretary, now the head of one of the big banks, private banks. revealing what his inside sources have told him. And as you listen to this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Max, actually, before we play it, Chris, because it's on my mind now, didn't most of the Arab countries in the region deny the United States, permission to fly over their airspace? Isn't that why the carriers are there?
Supposedly, the Qataris denied the U.S. the ability to launch strikes on Iran from Al Udeid Air Base. We'll see how far that gets them. It's not as though Trump is asking for anybody's permission now.
Yeah, I mean, Israel can bomb Qatar in Doha, and that seems to be fine to still preserve the Qatari-United States relationship, and we all know the reason why the United States has its biggest airbase in Qatar is to protect Israel. They just decided to play ball. For all this idea that it's Qatari propaganda, they sure are complicit with Israel and the United States and doing whatever they want there in that region. They can't make much of a fuss of it unless they want to get into the crosshairs of U.S. and Israel.
Almost as if he sees the entire region as a Buffalo Bills cheerleader. But the only country that's fully on board with these strikes is...
You said Donald Trump sees the whole region as a Buffalo Bills cheerleader? I can't with Max sometimes, man. He'll insert the funniest humor in the most random places, and it just gets me every single time, man.
The United Arab Emirates, which has been fully integrated into Greater Israel. The Saudis don't want it, and they're lobbying Trump against it. The Turkish government do not want it. Qatar absolutely does not want it because they see how potentially destabilizing it will be, and Iranian military sources are indicating that this time they will do deliberate damage to the global economy if they come under attack, especially if there are these decapitation strikes, and there will be havoc on the financial markets, and it's going to start with this, Saudi oil platforms. There could be a migration wave where Turkey will face a border problem. None of them want this, and they told Trump, "Do not do this." But it's what Israel wants that matters.
If you're watching this right now, I pray that you don't just scroll past. I hope that when your heart hears that.
It sure is. Doesn't that just say it all? When we're talking about the hierarchy of concerns or allies, it's always what Israel wants, even above our own interests, the interests of the American people that want to maybe have their own government serving them for once instead of this foreign regime. Another thing Max was talking about in regard to U.S.-Saudi relations, I want to add to that actually. The United States actually finalized a deal to send F-35 bombers over to Saudi Arabia for the first time late last year. It's something that much of the media isn't reporting, but it's also potentially intertwined into this plot to arm Iran's enemies against Iran for a possible, remember, new strike, an imminent strike that could happen. It's not being talked about a lot, but in addition to the U.S. moving the USS Abraham Lincoln, carrier, battle strike group, F-15s, F-22s, their own F-35s, they've also given the F-35s to Saudis. So all this could play a role in what's to come soon.
Chris, number 19.
I think it's very likely that over the next few days...
And I believe that it all does, because you've had a lot of people go on record to say that. Like, that's what President Trump is doing. He's arming them to get ready to be able to handle themselves against Iran. So those are the moves that I believe President Trump is making. I personally agree with Liberty on this. Shout out to him.
There will be something that happens in Iran. And
you do?
It's something big, yes.
Why do you think that?
I did, well, from a variety of different, indirect information, and also, to your point, I think it's entirely possible the United States was waiting for the carriers to arrive.
Was waiting for them?
For the carriers to arrive.
Okay. And that this is just the Greenland story?
Well, I don't know about head fake, but it has the effect of, it has that effect even if that's not the intent.
And that would mean what? How does that play out if that's actually the case?
Then the big question becomes, can you actually do regime change through effectively a bombing campaign? And I don't think we have any history in which that's effective, but we'll see. It depends what the objective.
Yeah, I'm not any fan of any Goldman Sachs banker, I'll tell you that, and that's an understatement, but I think that's actually right. There aren't many historical examples, if any, tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, of a regime change being finalized, coming to fruition without some form of boots on the ground, whether it's an internal revolt, armed rebellion, revolt, just through bombing. I don't think that's possible. It's certainly not possible in Tehran, if you ask me.
Of what happens is if it's to take out the ballistic missiles, that can be successful. If it's regime change, that's kind of more checkered history.
Does he even know what he's talking about? The United States can take out Iranian ballistic missiles?
They'll try to attack ballistic missile launching sites and do missile suppression attacks, but that's not the only weapon in Iran's arsenal that can do damage. And we haven't seen the full breadth or depth of Iran's ballistic missile arsenal at all. We did not see that in the 12-day war. It will be an intense few days if the U.S. strikes. They're going to try to go in hard as they did in Venezuela, knock out Iran's communication systems, knock out its air defenses, and then move in from there. But that does not guarantee regime change. Iran is not Venezuela. It has a percentage of its population that's willing to fight and die to defend the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, I think that's key. It doesn't guarantee regime change. No matter how many bombs you drop on them, there's no sense that will just innately cause an organic regime change. In fact, it's probably going to galvanize the populace behind the regime there. Why wouldn't it? That would happen in the United States. That would happen to anyone that's nationalistic and wants a sense of self-preservation. Not everyone connects with their government in that way, but a hell of a lot of the populace certainly does. And, he mentioned that we haven't seen the breadth of Iran's ballistic missile capabilities. I think that's true to an extent. It doesn't seem like, from the information I've gathered, that they really fired their full array of their best stuff against Israel in the 12-day war, but also their cruise missiles, which are often not talked about. They could pelt and do a lot of damage with the cruise missile systems that a lot of Americans and Israelis haven't seen yet either.
And what Orzag is suggesting is the U.S. would have to do boots on the ground. The American public has no appetite for that. And let's also consider Iran defeated the hybrid warfare tactics that were just deployed against it very handily and very quickly. Once the internet was taken out, the violence in Iran's cities stopped. The coordinated violence immediately stopped because the leaders of these riot cells could no longer get their...
And that's not shocking, right? He's like, once the internet was taken out. Yeah, no kidding, right? Because the things that people have access to can make them more violent. The things that they can listen to, the things that they can watch, the things that they can subject themselves to. It can make them actually more violent. It's a proven fact.
Their instructions from abroad.
Right.
Just getting them through secret signal groups. They were getting them through Israeli-backed international satellite channels like Iran International, which is like one of the main PSYOP sources for the Iranian public. They also knocked out Elon Musk's Starlink, which was being smuggled in by U.S. intelligence in the tens of thousands, and this was supposed to be the workaround after the internet blackout. They wiped it out, apparently with Russian cooperation.
So people ask me all the time, life is so uncertain right now, the waves of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that Max said there that I most am happy for, most encouraged by, is that there's no appetite among the American people for U.S. boots on the ground in Iran for a regime change on behalf of Israel. After all we've been through the past few decades of my lifetime, with all the spilled blood for nothing, for these regime change operations that result in, the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, expenditures of over trillions in dollars to replace the Taliban with the Taliban in Afghanistan, over 20 years, 4 presidents. That's what we get. That encourages me. However, of course, the banks and military-industrial complex and Israel lobby doesn't exactly care about what the average appetite of the American people are in terms of putting U.S. soldiers in harm's way. They might be willing to do that anyway. And that is a horrifying thing. Now, hopefully they lack the political capital to get away with it. I just hope that they do lack that capital.
And so I think whoever was seeking to instrumentalize these protests as a form of hybrid war against Iran underestimated the country's military and security forces. Just as Israel underestimated Iran when it launched its unprovoked attack in June of last year, they killed major commanders in the IRGC. Like, they killed the IRGC commander who designed the True Promise operations, Hajizadeh. They killed Bagheri, who was in charge of overseeing a government transition, and was a legendary figure. And within about 8 hours, Iran's leader Khamenei replaced all of his commanders, and Iran launched a massive ballistic missile volley that did serious damage to Israel and had Netanyahu on the back foot within 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, the United States and Israel have tried everything under the sun to try to enact regime change. And this is just the latest phase. They've tried to take out Soleimani, tried to decapitate the regime during the 12-day war, while they were telling the American public, hey, we're just in this to take out their nuclear enrichment process, their nuclear weapon facilities. That's why we're there. Well, you had the Israelis working hand in hand with the United States, calling their top officials in the government and saying, hey, turn over your arms or your family are going to be in trouble. They wanted regime change during that affair. If you don't think that, you're living in La La Land. You're not facing reality, because this one is the one that they've always wanted. And they always will push for it no matter what. You can see how the goalposts have moved, where anything they do, as Trump said, they try anything, we'll wipe them off the face of the planet. He said that. That's in a clip. It went from, we're taking out their nuclear weapon facilities, to they try anything, they're wiped off the face of the earth. And all of the things, you can take away all the rhetoric, all the argumentation, all the propaganda we're given, but they're actually moving all the military assets they would need to continue a strike into the region. And that's what concerns me most. Now, what I fear the most is a false flag attack by Israel or the United States, or a combination of the two, that does damage to U.S. forces and then is blamed on the Iranians as the generating element that will allow for a regime change operation with boots on the ground. That's the most concerning thing. I think a lot of us in the dissident world, the anti-war, non-interventionist world, are fearing that most of all. And I just hope and pray that does not come to fruition. The last thing we need is another regime change on behalf of Israel. And just any Israel first policy, or money going down the drain to this regime while they kill Palestinians indiscriminately. Even during a ceasefire, they do that in the hundreds of numbers. And if you don't believe me on that reporting, go over to antiwar.com. Dave DeCamp reports on that all the time. It's been over 500 Palestinians, I believe, at this point, since the ceasefire ended, that they've killed. And there's no sense that the Israel murder spree is going to end. They want to expand their West Bank settlements into Syria and Lebanon even further than they are now. And they want to destabilize the Iranian regime to possibly do the same there. They will not stop. And the U.S. just needs to get out of this. Bring our troops home. Stop funding this rogue regime. Stop funding any regime. You tell me. I wish we would stop funding X country. I'll agree with you. Every country other than our own. It's too much. We can't handle it. We need to get out of these stupid entangling alliances. Same thing with the proxy war versus Russia. But what do you guys think? Do you think Max is right? Is an attack imminent between the U.S. and Israel against Iran? Is that going to come soon? Are all the indications showing that? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Judge Napolitano. Great segment. Love when he has Max on every single time. And if you like this video, please join as a YouTube member, or consider doing so. By doing that, you can help support my channel, and in return, I'll give you access to all my members-only content. That's content that you can watch before it goes live to the general public, and I appreciate you.
All right, shout out to Liberty Vote for covering that. Appreciate it. We'll keep up on that. Imminent attack. I think it might be pretty imminent. Next up, the Young Turks cover Israel preparing for U.S. strike on Iran. Let's listen.
What's up, y'all? I'm Percy Miller, Master P, and I want to tell y'all, social media, physical products, digital products.
like we did last time, on behalf of Israel to eliminate yet another enemy of Israel. This is all about Israel. Zero American interest in this. None. Zero. No one has ever said anything about American interest. They don't even bother. They're just like, well, obviously we have to murder them and decapitate their regime and change it and put in a shah, a king, etc., a dictator, and of course that will help Israel. Well, where does it help us? Why doesn't Israel go fight its own war? In fact, as you're about to see, Israel's a little worried that they might get struck in this attack. They're like, America, you do it, okay? Here's some bribes, here's extortion, here's Jeffrey Epstein, you do it, okay? And they're like, oh, no, they might hit Israel. Well, then don't start the war. Problem solved. So why do they want regime change? Guys, they're never going to stop until they get regime change. It isn't about the missiles or the nukes or the protesters in the streets. Israel just slaughtered 70,000 people in the streets. You think they care about people dying? Israel's heart is so broken over Muslims being killed in the streets. How can you say that with a straight face when every Israel supporter was like, 20,000 children dead? I love it. They deserved it. They had it coming. They're all stupid Muslims waiting to be terrorists. That's why we murdered their children. Yes, they say, right? Then they're like, oh, we're so heartbroken about Muslim protesters being killed in Iran. No, so why do they want regime change? Because they don't want democracy. What if the protests work? Because there's two different things, guys, super important. Israel's hiding, as usual, behind human shields. Those are the Iranian protesters, right? There are real protesters who are mad about what's going on in Iran. And those guys, and the Ayatollah is not somebody that anyone is in favor of in America, right? And it's a dictatorship. So there's a real issue about Iran, their internal politics, and who should rule Iran. Israel's like, oh, great, let's take advantage of that. But we don't actually want the protesters winning, because if they win, they might get a democracy, and a democracy in Iran might be even more hostile to Israel than the Ayatollah was. Because the Ayatollah cares about his own ass, so when he thought he might die, he was like, and he backed off a little bit, right? Yeah. But in a democracy, they might go more against Israel, so they don't want that. So that is why you're seeing all over American media this clown, this Shah that they're parading around with a red nose. Don't forget, Noble Mobile's saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch, because same phone dictator. By the way, we think Americans don't understand what the word Shah means, so that's why we keep using it. Shah just means king, which means dictator. By the way, he went and kissed the wall. And he went to Israel, the Shah that they want to install, and he said, I'll serve Israel. Of course. So that this war is 1,000% for Israel.
And that is why, like, when I point out that the motivations are that they don't actually care, that's not just like a side point. That has to do with the outcome that you'll have. And this is not purely hypothetical. We've already seen it in Venezuela. They took out the leadership. So now democracy? No democracy. No, they get someone that serves them and primarily serves American business interests. Maduro sucked. The replacement, is that going to be better for the people of Venezuela? Maybe. I guess roll the dice. But there's no guarantee, and certainly it is not up to them. There's no self-determination here where they get to choose, and there is no reason to believe that that is the case, or that will be the case in Iran. And I actually do care about them. If I could press a button and yeet the entire regime into the sun and have it be replaced by actual democracy in Iran, I would do that. Because I do actually care about them. But I don't trust Donald Trump. I certainly don't trust Netanyahu to actually allow them to choose what happens to them. It'll be a different form. And we'll see. That said, do you want to move on to the other war that we might soon be launching?
Okay.
You want to talk about the death toll?
Yeah, so last quick thing here, guys. So you're seeing tons of propaganda from the Israelis /CBS. Oh, 12,000 died, 20,000 died. That's made up. It looks like, though, about 5,000 have died. But what you might not know, okay, and it's very hard to get information, and I condemn the Iranian government for the killings. I condemn the Iranian government for running a dictatorship in the first place, and I condemn them for shutting off the internet, just like Israel has, kills the journalists so nobody can see the genocide in Gaza. Iran is shutting off the power and the journalists, etc., so no one can see what they're doing. But also, Mossad and Israel has bragged about how they have provocateurs in the streets, and they are actively causing violence, killing the security forces so that there's a bigger bloodbath, so they could use it as an excuse to attack Iran. And so, but most importantly for us, back here in America, okay, if you think there's never going to be a cost, and a lot of MAGA's riding high thinking, oh, we keep doing all these bombings, and we never lose anybody. First of all, it costs tons of money, and the media never tells you about that, because beloved Israel must be protected, and all of our money must be spent on behalf of Israel. So shh, Jake Tapper will never tell you all the money we spend fighting these wars for Israel. But on top of that, of course there's going to be a cost. Are you crazy? You think that we're going to go into war after war, bombing after bombing, and we're never going to lose anyone? And the minute we lose someone, they're going to say we have to go deeper into war. That's the trick every single time. Please don't fall for it. And every American soldier that dies is on Israel's hands, okay? Because there's no one in America that wants this war other than Israel first.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of bad things that could happen, but thankfully what's never happened before is that we go into a country, kill the regime, replace it with someone that the people didn't choose, and then a year or 10 years or 20 years later that produces a new revolutionary movement or terrorist groups. That's never happened, at least.
Yeah, I mean, look at how brazen they are. Last time we did this, we did a coup in 1953 against Iran, and eventually we imposed the Shah, right? And then that led to the Ayatollah and the Islamic Revolution. So now our new genius idea is, let's install his son. That's just going to repeat the cycle. Mm-hmm. If you don't like Islamic extremism, you would never put a Shah in charge of Iran. But they don't mind any of that because it's more excuses. So Israel can go, Islamic extremism. Oh, we're the only democracy in the Middle East. Why? They love the dictators. They impose half the dictators in the Middle East on those Arab countries. Those are puppets for Israel. Half of those leaders in the Middle East totally and utterly work for Israel, and Israel loves that they're dictators because they suppress their own people on behalf of Israel. And that's what they would love to do to Iran, a dictatorship run by Israel. I have no interest in a dictatorship from the Ayatollah, and I have no interest in a dictatorship from Israel. Free Iran, and that does not mean bomb them and kill them. It means actually encourage in other ways, peaceful ways, diplomatic ways, economic ways, for democracy to bloom in Iran. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true.
Well, democracy in Iran in one sentence. I don't know what that looks like, guys, but we'll see. We'll see going forward as far as this whole regime change is looking very interesting. All right, so we're going to keep moving forward, and we have the Young Turks. Trump attacks Ilhan Omar, gets proved hilariously wrong. Let's take a listen. Ilhan Omar, what you up to?
If you're serious about landing a legit remote job right now, stop wasting time on mainstream job boards. Those platforms have millions of applicants flooding.
Donald Trump also once again wants Representative Ilhan Omar to be investigated, probably locked up, maybe deported, possibly executed. I don't know how the rest of the year is going to go, but he was tweeting about her once again, saying, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is worth over $30 million. There is no way such wealth could have been accumulated legally while being paid the salary of a politician. She should be investigated for capital F financial and capital P political crimes, and that investigation should start now. So obviously, just blatantly telling Pam Bondi, investigate this congressperson I don't like. I would just remind everyone, Donald Trump apparently made about $1.4 billion in the last year while being paid the salary of a politician. But apparently he can earn that totally legally. Ilhan Omar cannot earn, I don't know, 0.001% as much. Who knows? In any event, here's what we actually know about this total non-scandal that is being investigated by House Republicans as if it's a serious thing. So in a May 2025 financial disclosure, Omar listed 2 large assets tied to her husband, whom she married in 2020. This is Tim Nanette. What is a winery business valued between $1 million and $5 million? and the other is a venture capital firm valued between $5 million and $25 million. Based on the valuations, her and her husband have a net worth between $6 and $30 million, obviously a large range, minus liabilities, such as Omar's student loan debt of between $15,000 and $50,000 that she disclosed on a 2024 form. I guess she just forgot to use her many millions of dollars to pay it off for some reason. In any event, so you might wonder, okay, well, that does seem like a lot of money. I mean, she didn't used to have that much money. Well, she didn't used to be married.
She forgot to pay it off somehow. That seems so convenient. But this is what we see it across the board with Democrats and Republicans, but it's just something about like those Democrats and their net worth, man. It's just through the roof sometimes.
To a guy who has part ownership in multiple businesses. So each of those two businesses has a very wide range, $1 to $5 million, $5 to $25 million. Those are very different. Also, it's not that he has $1 to $5 million or $5 to $25 million in these businesses. The businesses are worth that. They're owned by multiple people. And none of them are her, by the way. It's her husband. And yet, because she's married to a person who has this money, well, clearly she's doing something illegal to get it. I mean, in that case, lock Donald Trump up for Melania Trump receiving a massive bribe from Jeff Bezos for this documentary that nobody ever asked for. Again, when they do it, it's the best thing ever. When they take literally billions of dollars in crypto investments from the Saudis or the Emirates or whatever, totally cool, don't even look into it. He's selling NFTs, he's getting a $400 million jet. All of that is totally above board and shouldn't even be looked into, and how dare you even bring it up. But she married a guy that has, compared to the rest of Congress, not even that much money, and she should be immediately investigated by Pam Bondi. And maybe that will happen, maybe that won't happen, but she is being investigated by House Republicans right now, Jake.
Yeah, so let's go over this real quick. So we were in favor of the Stock Act when the Democrats were in charge, and the Democrats were pretending, well, maybe we could, look at that, we just couldn't pass it, right? Now Republicans are in charge, and we're still in favor of the Stock Act, which is to say that they should not do insider trading in Congress. And the Republicans who earlier were pretending they were in favor of it are now all of a sudden opposed to it. Oh, look at that. Okay. This is how it goes round and around and around. So in reality, if you investigated these guys, you would find that tons of Republicans and Democrats have taken information that they know from the government that the public does not know and made a tremendous amount of money from it. And yes, that includes Nancy Pelosi. Now, in this case, is that what seems to have happened? No, she married a wealthy guy. Mystery solved. Wow, crazy. By the way, what happened? I thought she married her brother. That was a different conspiracy theory that the right wing had. So is it the brother, or is it the rich guy, or is it her stealing? Can we make up our mind about the conspiracy theory we want to go with for Ilhan Omar? So, because then you look a little foolish when you go with all three, right? A little. So, okay, now, talk about enriching yourself.
Yeah, a little, because then you look like you're just throwing things out there to hopefully make something stick, and that you don't actually have something. We know the things that have been said, but like, which one is it? You definitely want to pick something that's credible. Also, it looks like you're just throwing darts at this point.
So, are you insane? So not only did Jack give you the numbers, 30 million for marrying a rich guy, to Trump, 1.4 billion. And by your own words, Donald Trump, you can't possibly make that as a politician. So you must definitely be guilty. And I guess you're guilty, 30, 50 times more than Ilhan Omar. So maybe we should lock you up for 50 more years than her if we're going to lock her up. I mean, this is your logic. It's not my logic. But I'm going to come back to the worst corruption in a second. What were you going to say, Jeff?
Yeah, just to quickly say, the $1.4 billion isn't his net worth. That's what he made last year. This $30 million is an estimate of her total, of her and her husband's total net worth. It's not even apples to apples, and even if it were, it's a tiny little apple and an absolutely massive apple.
Look, if I told you all the corruption that Trump has done just in the last year, it'd take the rest of the 2-hour show. Okay, but I'll give you 3 quick examples. Qatar gives him a $400 million jet, just gives it to him. That's normal. That's not anywhere near normal. Okay. Number 2. Why is he letting all this guys who committed white-collar crime out of prison? He's giving them all pardons, and look at that. Then they give money to his meme coin. That is wildly illegal. That is just a bribe. That is as corrupt as it gets. And by the way, a lot of the right-wing know that. Meme coins are junk, and they now hate them, and Trump is using it to just get bribes, period. I mean, look, there should be consequences for that legally, but I know it'll never happen. I got it, etc. Right? But then finally, the latest thing he did is the biggest outrage I've ever seen. So we attack Venezuela, we take their leader, we kidnap them, And then we start seizing their oil and from the tankers. And then he's like, I'm going to put it into my own bank account in Qatar.
You always wondered why that app didn't exist. Now you can make it. Meet Replit.
What? What does that mean? Imagine if Joe Biden stole some other country's oil, and maybe you're okay with that so far, and then he puts it into his own bank account in a different country? Oh, come on. And you have the nerve to talk about corruption. I mean, Donald Trump is by far the most corrupt president we have ever had. It's not within a country mile. I mean, and the Republican Party, look, again, we're nonpartisan, fair share in America. I bash the Democrats who are corrupt 24/7, okay? But Rick Scott committed over $1 billion in Medicare fraud. The senator from Florida is literally one of the largest crooks in American history. He robbed little grandmothers and grandfathers, and with the ill-gotten goods from those robberies, he used it to run for office, and he became governor and senator. And people are still celebrating Rick Scott. Now, if you ever voted for Rick Scott, anyway, I'll leave it at Rick Scott. You should have a very tall glass of shut-up juice for the rest of your life about corruption, because that guy's it's just an out-and-out thief. He's one of the worst guys in the country. So clean up your own house and don't do this nonsense. By the way, last thing, John, when they do these false charges of corruption, when the city is actually overflowing with actual corruption, yes, on both sides. Yes, Trump does it more spectacularly, okay? But it's overflowing. But when you do the false charges, then the establishment gets to say, no, there's no corruption at all. That's like when they made up those charges against Ilhan Omar. Ignore everything else. Ignore everything else. It's like when people make up false charges of racism, it hurts the ability to fight real racism, right? Same thing with false charges of corruption that Trump throws out all the time. Yeah. It hurts the ability to fight real corruption.
Yeah. And I just want to end with something I think deeply ironic, and it has to do with you've been alluding to. There's so much just projection. This Tuesday, he did his press conference and spoke for. I think he's still speaking actually. But anyway, one of the things he said was he was attacking Somalis again because you could just be openly, wildly, explicitly racist now against Somalis for some reason. And he says, you know what they're good at? That's about the only thing they're good at. They're good at pirating ships at sea, big ships. Donald Trump has literally been going around the Caribbean, blowing up ships, seizing them, stealing what they have, and then burying it in offshore accounts. And the Somalis have pirates.
Yeah, guys,
it's insane.
All you got to do is fill in the blank. If somebody says, all the Somalis are good for is stealing ships, okay, take out Somalis, put in your own group, and see how you like it. All white people are good for is stealing crap. That's the problem with white people. You'd be like, that's insane, because it is insane.
Yeah.
But when you say it about Somalis, you think somehow it's right? No, it's not right. It's like literally the definition of racism.
100%.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true. But it does keep you updated on our live shows.
Too bad everyone doesn't think like that. Too bad everyone does not think like that. All right, hold on. Let me refresh this right here for you guys. Let's go to... All right, next up we got Representative Jasmine Crockett on Jack Smith, Trump's crimes and why Republicans dodged the truth. All right, this is on Representative Jasmine Crockett's channel, so go check that out when you guys have a chance. Let's take a listen.
Jasmine Crockett, who, as you know, is also joining me now, one of the lawmakers on the House Judiciary Committee in that hearing today, Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who, as you know, is also running for Senate in Texas. Congressman, thank you for being here. I know you're very busy with the work that you are doing. I want to begin with the fact that this was the very first time, really, that Jack Smith may have had his day in court, so to speak, publicly. He's wanted to testify publicly. You had advocated for that as well. Do you think that his ability to do so today was a good thing?
I do. I was receiving text messages as the hearing was going on from all kinds of people, other lawmakers, as well as just people back home that were watching. And so I think that it was an opportunity for America to see the credibility of the person who has really been put on trial when it comes to the public opinion, right? And that's been by the president. He has consistently said all kinds of nasty and threatening things about Jack Smith. But Jack Smith, as a prosecutor, and you know how this goes, as a prosecutor, he's not a political figure. So this is somebody who was kind of in the shadows. And basically, Jack's like, I am going to stand by my work. The only reason these charges got dropped is because you became president. And we know that that's why he ran, was so that he could avoid prosecution.
You know, you made the point earlier today as well that he had been criticized more for whether he had the authority to prosecute more than the actual substance of the allegations that grand juries indicted him on. Why do you think Republicans focus more on really process more than the result?
Because it didn't work out very well for them, right? They didn't want to talk about the actual subject matter, which the subject matter was the fact that the president needed to be prosecuted. And as I stated today, I am almost positive that if Jack Smith would have had his day in court and prosecuted the president, well, the president would be under the jail right now. But unfortunately, he never got to see that day for a number of reasons. One, obviously, involves Eileen Cannon, who is a Trump appointee, and basically, I would just say a Trump flunky.
Obviously, she is the judge who still has a remaining kind of gag order on the classified documents report out of Mar-a-Lago. So he was constrained to some degree of what he could actually say. Many believe there was a perjury trap that was already being set from his presence. And also, would he violate that order and get himself in hot water? Even without that, though, President Trump is calling for him to be prosecuted. And a long line of people he's already called to be prosecuted. Your reaction?
Correct. Just like most of the other prosecutors that he's gone after, who are sound prosecutors that went after not the president, but they followed the evidence. And the evidence led them to this idea or the conclusion that the president is a criminal. And let me remind people, he is a 34-count convicted felon who was convicted by a jury of his peers. And so I know that Jack Smith is really tight on this. You know, I said in the closed-door deposition that he delivered when he talked about Volume 2 and basically said, I'm not allowed to speak about that because of an order, right? And so they were consistently trying to get him even behind closed doors. And so he's been very careful and methodical like a good prosecutor would be. And regardless of whether or not he respects Eileen Cannon as a judge or respects her lack of ability to process things in the way that we would expect of a jurist, he still respects the law. And that is the one thing that I want people to understand, as they were going after him and saying that this was nothing but a witch hunt and that it was weaponization. In the midst of all this drama, he's still saying that this rogue judge has a court order and he's abiding by that. That tells you everything that you need to know about who he is.
And yet they were criticizing his career as a prosecutor. He went to great lengths at different points to make sure he was differentiated from the person, Jack Smith, and the role of his office and representing the Department of Justice. Obviously, prosecutors are fungible. It's the people versus an issue. But there was an issue that really got under the craw of Republicans like Jim Jordan, and that was the subpoenas for phone records. Now, these subpoenas did not actually get the substance of the phone calls. No one's wiretapping through it. It's actually quite common, but you get the fact that a call was made and the duration and the telephone numbers. But then there's also a point about confidential sourcing and the payment. Did either of those 2 points, either in the first time you heard him behind closed doors or now, do you think that impacts his credibility?
No, absolutely not. The fact that he got toll records. Remember when the Senate decided to add in, when they reopened the government, $500,000 payments? Now, can you imagine that basically you decided that you were going to be on a phone call with a criminal, a defendant, right? And basically, as they are trying to develop their case and they are trying to figure out the Senate,
it's the people versus an issue. But there was an issue that really got under the craw of Republicans like Jim Jordan, and that was the subpoenas for phone records. Now, these subpoenas did not actually get the substance of the phone calls. No one's wiretapping through it. It's actually quite common, but you get the fact that a call was made and the duration and the telephone numbers. But then there's also a point about confidential sourcing and the payment. Did either of those 2 points, either in the first time you heard him behind closed doors or now, do you think that impacts his credibility?
No, absolutely not. The The fact that he got toll records. Remember when the Senate decided to add in, when they reopened the government, $500,000 payments? Now, can you imagine that basically you decided that you were going to be on a phone call with a criminal, a defendant, right? And basically, as they are trying to develop their case and they are trying to figure out like who was where, making what phone calls, and to who and to how, that's all they were, was toll records. These were not wiretaps, right? Interestingly enough, today I also dealt with MLK and the declassification of those documents. And we were talking about Hoover and how Hoover tapped MLK's phones, right? Like, this is what the federal government did. And I also
That's the substance of the call, not just the existence.
Exactly. Not just the existence, right? But we know that this federal government, as they said that, oh, this was a weaponization by this rogue.
I don't know about you guys, but watching Laura Coates and Jasmine Crockett together during this specific interview talking about this is very interesting to me. Because just the two of them together, it just seems like the perfect setup, right? It just, especially if you're just listening to how the conversation is going and the way, like, I mean, Jasmine Crockett is making a good point. If someone had fraudulent evidence against you, would you be able to just keep going and hold your composure during the whole time? Probably not. That would be hard for anybody to do.
DOJ under the Biden-Harris administration, which is very weird too, because, you know, Biden was coming in, whole issue. But nevertheless, and this was a special appointed prosecutor, right? But the idea that they have the audacity to make these arguments in a time in which ICE, of all organizations, has decided that they are going to spy on people. That is crazy. Like, you're mad that somebody sees that you made a phone call, yet you have nothing to say about, especially on today, where we went through our funding bill and you increased the funding to ICE. ICE is now the 5th largest funded military in the world. That is crazy. And they are consistently violating people's constitutional rights. That's not a violation of your constitutional rights whatsoever.
Identify the part about the spying. What is the reference you're making to ICE being allowed to spy? Are you talking about a memo to go to people's homes or something more?
No. Right now, what they're doing is getting technology to actually get at people's cell phones and that information. And so, to me, I don't know how far they're going to go with that, but that's what they're doing now.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, thank you for joining.
Absolutely.
I don't know about ICE being the 5th funded largest military organization in the world. That's kind of crazy. If that's what President Trump has turned them into, that's very interesting, especially with the uproar that we see and how much problems that we've been having. And I don't know, like, just problems in regards to like protesters and people kind of like harming ICE and like impeding what they're trying to do. And I know everyone doesn't like what they're trying to do, but what we've seen hasn't helped at all, right? It's just made things worse. So, I mean, that's kind of a crazy truth bomb for her to drop, for them to be that funded, that they're that far up there now. That's crazy. All right, let's jump into the next clip. We have, I think I want to go to, no, I'll go first here. Shout out to Bakari Settlers, channel favorite, CNN anchor. Debate over ICE's warrantless home entries. Let's take a listen.
Texas was feeling unwelcome. Now Texas is an open door to new TurboTax stores. Meet our experts. They do your taxes, so you can look out with confidence. Now this is Texas.
Warrants. These are typically never seen by a judge. Tonight, an unprecedented escalation in Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Federal immigration officers are asserting a sweeping power to forcibly enter people's homes without a warrant, contradicting ICE's own written guidance. In a memo obtained by the AP, the acting ICE director instructs officers to forcibly enter residences based solely on administrative warrants. These are typically never seen by a judge. So a whistleblower report has highlighted that this memo has not actually been widely shared within ICE, but its contents are being used to verbally train new officers. It's unclear how broadly the directive has been applied, but video from earlier this month shows officers bearing only an administrative warrant and ramming the front door of a man. So this whistleblower complaint, I think, really explains some of what we've been seeing, Bakari. And it also suggests that there's some surreptitiousness happening even within ICE, where people are being told not to actually write them down, not to keep the directives, but to read it and then return it. What do you think is going on here?
I mean, I think ICE has run amok. I think that's what we're seeing. I think that the fact that they only trained 47 days, that should, one, outrage everybody. I mean, the fact is most barbers in the United States of America, most beauticians, all have to have more training than that. They're going out on the street. They're disregarding the law. They act as if they're above the law. You have the little short guy who runs ICE, marching in the street, looking like the head of the Gestapo. I mean, this is not what America is. And then I want to quote Kavanaugh, which is rare for me to quote, but he says the officers must not make interior immigration stops or arrests based on race or ethnicity. This was a footnote in one of the opinions that he wrote. And that's not, I mean, we literally are seeing ICE agents go out there and stop people because of what they look like.
To the point where they are stopping Native Americans, they're stopping African Americans, they're stopping U.S. citizens.
You saw the Twin Cities, and this is frustrating to me, because even when I served in the General Assembly in South Carolina, you got to a point where Democrats and Republicans were able to look at each other and say, look, this is some bullshit. This is cool. Whatever. We understand. There was a point in which we were South Carolinians or Americans first. Now you have limited government Republicans running around and they're okay with warrantless searches. How does that make sense? This is an abuse of power.
The people who, on the right in particular, who are typically concerned about things like, the government overreach, searches and seizures, etc., does it give you pause that they are expanding the view of what they can do to break into people's homes?
Well, first of all, it's not without a warrant. It's an administrative warrant. And what the memo actually says is if a judge has issued a final order of removal, meaning that this is an illegal who has gotten a lot of due process already and exhausted every single legal avenue to challenge their deportation.
I guess on that front, let me just pause you there, because I just don't want people to be confused. The administrative warrant is not a warrant that a judge sees. Typically in the United States, in order for authorities to break into your home without your permission, they need a judge to see it and to say you can enter because you're looking for something you're authorized to enter.
Have constitutional rights.
But that man, for example, that we just played the video of, he might have lived in that house, but that house also resided other American citizens. So again, where are the people on the right who are typically concerned about constitutional rights? Are you not at all worried
about constitutional rights for
that
American
they can just break into your home?
We have different standards of what due process is owed to an American citizen and what is owed to a non-citizen.
What about this
scenario? And we should all support that.
What about
we should all want a higher level of due process, constitutional rights that are guaranteed to us as American citizens, not to illegals, because it's supposed to mean something to be an American.
But there are a lot of problems with that. I mean, there are constitutional rights that, just basic constitutional rights that don't change based on whether you're a citizen.
Yeah, but you're wrong, Batia, because
they have a right to due process, but that standard is much lower than what counts as due process.
You're wrong. The Fifth and 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution provide that everyone, even non-citizens, have a right to due process.
Yes, to due process, but the standard of due process for expelling an illegal is much lower than the standard that we would have if we were
talking about entering one's domicile, one's abode.
They have a final order of deportation.
Batia, you cannot utilize military or law enforcement in the United States of America to enter one's home colloquially willy-nilly. You just simply cannot do that because of the fundamental guarantees we have under the United States Constitution.
Yes,
and what happens
as Americans,
one way or another, there's no question that this is going to be challenged, because prior to this moment, this actually has not been the DHS's policy, because they don't, previously to this new determination, for whatever reason, they believed that it
Yeah, this is going to be a problem regardless, because this is not how the Department of Homeland Security would handle this in the past. But it's like it's a case by case basis, so that's where I would say I push back a little bit. It's case by case basis. We have seen. I wouldn't say it's violating constitutional rights, but we know. I mean, this is we on CNN. Yeah, this is CNN, so we know they're going to push the envelope regardless. They do that.
it would have been unconstitutional to enter a home forcibly without a warrant.
Yeah, and we will see what the court rules. I'm a big fan of warrants, and I'm not a lawyer, so I can't go. What's the difference between an administrative and a regular warrant? I don't know, so I don't want to speak out of school here. But the courts will rule, and similar to how you saw Trump act in the last Supreme Court ruling in pulling National Guard out, not very dictator-like, I'll be honest. We hear he's a dictator, and then he listens to the courts. I don't think Hitler did that much. But look, I like warrants as usual. But my concern mostly is why people with deportation orders dating back to 1996, rape, multiple counts of homicide, etc., were allowed to re-enter the streets in Minnesota, didn't do anything about it, and why they don't listen to Tom Homan and let them get them in the jails so we don't have to go.
Nobody is arguing against grabbing the worst of the worst, the rapists. If he was actually doing that, I think everybody would be applauding him.
They won't let them in jails. Of course, people
Can I finish my thought for a minute? I think Barack.
Jesus, Donald Trump.
Corey is completely right that they have run amok. Right now, as we sit here, it was just found that a Cuban immigrant who was being held in an El Paso jail, the medical examiner has found that he was killed in ICE custody in a detention center. There have been more deaths since Trump took office, over 30 deaths in ICE custody. And I think we as Americans should be setting an example to the world of how we treat people, even when they are detained. And there is such performative, emboldened cruelty that is happening because this administration is encouraging it.
And that is everyone supports it.
We have to hit pause.
Nobody supports that. Nobody supports that. Look at his numbers. Look at his approval numbers on immigration.
From the break coming up.
Let me do this, Johnny. All right, so I want to go why Trump just blocked CBC. Let me do this one. All right, so let's move to. I do want to cover because there's a big snowstorm, so I do want to cover that forecast. There's a lot of people that's going to be impacted by it. It's actually millions. But before I jump to that, I was looking. Where is this CBC? Let's see. There we go. Let's look at CBC News. So I want to take a look at this before I jump there, let's go to Washington Week first. So Washington Week PBS. I want to go to CBC because just something with President Trump and Prime Minister Carney, but I just want to look at Trump alienates America's allies. So I thought that was an interesting title that they titled it, the headline on Washington Week. So we're going to take a look at it. They're saying that President Trump is alienating America's allies. So we're not going to watch this whole thing because it's 21 minutes in its entirety. So we'll watch probably about 10 minutes of this, and then we'll jump to the CBC clip that I was looking for. That one's about 9 minutes. So let's jump right in.
That Donald Trump's blunt attempts to get European nations to spend more on their own defense is good for Europe, good for America, and good for us taxpayers. Let's also state the obvious. If you are interested in preserving Canada's independence and the independence of the free nations of Europe, you would build your militaries the way America has built its military. But there are ways that allies talk to each other, even when they disagree. And Donald Trump's way is not the usual way these things are done. For instance, his offensive comments about NATO's contribution to the war effort in Afghanistan, in which more than 1,000 European soldiers died, do nothing except alienate America's friends, and by the way, insult the American and European soldiers who fought side by side in countless battles over many years. The question is, how much damage is he doing? Joining me to discuss all this, Peter Baker, the chief White House correspondent at the New York Times. Leanne Caldwell is the chief Washington correspondent at Puck. Stephen Hayes is the editor of The Dispatch. and Idris Khalloun is a staff writer at The Atlantic. Thank you all for being here. I know that myself, I would rather talk about the snowstorm that's coming, but we're going to talk about the state of the world instead, because I don't have the weather equipment behind me. I just have an inaccurate picture of the White House still. Idris, let me start with you, but before I ask you anything, I want you to listen to a little bit of what the Canadian Prime Minister said at Davos. Let's listen to that.
If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships.
Okay, you're an economics reporter. Can hegemons continually monetize their relationship? Answer that one second. The first question is what does this mean? Everybody is talking about Carney's speech in which he talked about a rupture in the Western Alliance as a rupture itself. This is the moment when everything kind of burst out. It was called a galvanizing moment at Davos. We can make jokes about that later. But give us the context and give us the importance of that moment.
I think what Carney did was he took the mask off. He one of the most important things that he said in that speech was that the rules-based international order had really worked as intended, but Canada went along with it. That they knew that America sort of didn't abide by the rules all the time, but they adhered to it largely enough that it was worthwhile for middle-income countries to go along with rules. And now what Carney has said in both this speech and in his trip to China when he met with Xi Jinping is that there's a new world order. And if Donald Trump wants to act like the hegemon in North America, China in Asia, Russia in Europe, then countries like his have to pivot and they have to deal with the multipolar world as it exists. And he had a lot of good lines for economists, commentaries or positive some. He's a central banker. Central bankers seem to be the only people who are really good at standing up to Donald Trump in this country and in Canada.
That's interesting. We're waiting to see what the Mexican central banker does. Peter, Trump was surprised and upset a little about this. Actually, there's an interesting, we have a little montage to show you about their very unusual kind of slow motion interaction. Why don't we watch that for a second? I want you to talk about it.
We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
I watched your prime minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
Now, there was a certain, nice bottle of maple syrup you got there, Mark. Hate to see anything happen to it. Quality to Donald Trump's...
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about Mark's comeback. You see, Canada, this is what I was saying. Like shout out to my Canadians, man. That is my second, I say often here on the channel, that is my second most watched country on my channel. Shout out to Canada. I love Canada. I'm upset. I was upset when Carney won. I'm sorry. It's not a secret. It's not a secret. I was going for Pierre. I'm not afraid to say it. And I feel like Pierre would have handled Trump better. That's just my opinion. I mean, I know you guys can tell me whatever you want in the chat, but I just feel like Pierre would have did a better job. Because look at Carney's comeback. He says, Canada doesn't live because of America. Canada thrives. I said, okay, first of all, sir, pause. These are two different words here. President Trump said, you guys live because of us. You said you guys thrive for whatever you said. These are two different things. You did not say that you thrive because Canada is Canada. I mean, you did not say you live because Canada is Canada. So what President Trump says stands, right? You live because America, and you're thriving because you're Canada. I can't believe this. This is what Mark Carney did to you guys. This is why I said Pierre would have did better. He would have did better for you guys. I'm just saying.
Laconic but threatening posture. But what does this out and out rupture mean for the relationship? I mean, they're our biggest trading partner, among other things, and we share the longest border in the world, most peaceful border in the world. where are we in U.S.-Canada relations?
Well, if Donald Trump gets his way, there will be no border. It'll simply be another part of the United States. And he demonstrated that online with a map that he shows an artificial intelligence created image of U.S. flag over the U.S., over what is currently Canada, over what is currently Greenland, over what is currently Venezuela, as if to demonstrate that he intends to be the imperial power of the Western Hemisphere. And you can see why Canada might not take that as much of a joke. It's not very funny to them. And Carney, I think, to his point, is pull it off the mask is a good way to put it. I think this is the week when our allies discovered that flattery and appeasement only go so far, right? Why did Donald Trump reverse course on Greenland? It's very likely that he reversed course because he saw that it wasn't going to happen, right? That for the first time, maybe in his 5 years in the White House, Europe and Canada and all these countries said, no, that's not happening. That's a red line here. We're not going to try to pretend that this is a reasonable, rational policy of trying to take over an ally's territory. And that had effect on the bond markets, and ultimately he went from within a few hours saying, I must have it all, to, hey, we'll see what happens.
But let's go back in time a full week ago to when we were going to conquer Greenland, not Canada. And by the way, remember Venezuela? That was crazy. And remember Epstein before Venezuela? That was also very interesting. But go back to Greenland. Is the crisis diffused, Steve? I mean, he's so mercurial that it might just pop back out next week.
Right. I mean, look, he had said as recently as Wednesday that the United States needed to control Greenland, and that the strong implication was that we needed to take it. However, he very deliberately did not rule out the use of force, and multiple times suggested that we would be using force to take it because we needed it. Of course, Greenland was not mentioned in the 33-page national security strategy of the United States, but Trump threatened tariffs on allies on the supposition that not having Greenland constituted a national security emergency. I mean, we haven't had Greenland for centuries, but not having Greenland now constituted a national security urgency. I mean, look, his arguments about Greenland have been farcical, I think, for a long time, and people have understood them as farcical until such point as they can't afford to. Europeans and our allies and Canadians, they can't afford to have the seriously, literally debate that people here in the United States does. They have to take him seriously and literally, and they did.
It's interesting you mentioned that because Mike Johnson said this week that, we take him, you should take him seriously, but not always literally. This was in the course of explaining, that he understands why what Trump wants Greenland, but, we're not going to have a war. And Leanne, I always ask you the same question. It's really Groundhog Day.
I don't think we're going to have a war, and I really hope we don't, because it's not necessary with Greenland. If you guys have been following the live streams and you've been looking at what some of the credible sources have been saying, it's just not necessarily, because historically we have not needed to do such a thing in Greenland. At one point, like you guys have probably heard already, we've had over 10,000 soldiers there, 18 military bases. That is extremely dwindled down since then. I mean, we are down to like one military base and probably under 200 soldiers. But there's no need for any war to happen. There's no need. People are basically saying there's no need for anything aggressive to take place because we haven't needed to do that historically with Greenland. I happen to agree with that stance. So any type of hostile takeover of Greenland, I don't think I'm going to support that. This is not, Maduro in Venezuela. It's not that. So I don't think that I would support anything like that. I think this would have to be a much different approach.
But when are they going to, in Congress, going to say, no, stop doing this? There's literally it's very hard to find a positive reason to alienate Canada. And there are a lot of Republican senators who understand that. Give us a sense inside the Senate Republican caucus, just for starters, and you can go to Mike Johnson. Give us a sense of, are you seeing any, to borrow a word from Canada, ruptures
Yeah, well, you get sick of me asking me the question. I kind of write a different version of the same thing all the time. But I will say, with the Greenland situation, when I was talking to Republicans on Capitol Hill, this was really the first time in the second Trump administration that I got a lot of anger privately, of course, from House Republicans. This was a red line for them as any sort of military invasion. If Denmark came with open arms and said, name your price, yes, that is a whole different story. But there was a lot of back channeling with the administration to let them know that not only is this that it's not going to be approved, Congress isn't going to support it, that he is actually hurting their midterm chances because this is something that is absolutely unpopular with voters who are like, why are we talking about it? But they were afraid to say anything publicly. They didn't want to poke the bear.
You need to know, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the answer.
Right, which means that they were hoping that this back channeling and this subtle conversation with the president and his team would get them to the right place.
Was it this back channeling, or was it the market dip on the fear that Trump was about to go attack a treaty ally, Idris?
I think it was the stock market going down. I think it was 10-year, 30-year yields going up. Mortgage rates are going to go up as a result of that. It was also the Europeans saying very clearly, for probably the first time, that no, this will not stand. If you look at what's happened over the course of the last year, the Europeans accepted a pretty not nice trade deal. They basically accepted that America would be tariffing their goods, and they weren't going to retaliate. And I think I've seen the limits of appeasement. I think that channel was probably very important. I think the Republican pushback, it's been real. That's how a lot of the nominees have gotten pulled. They don't sort of get pulled with a public denunciation, but this private back channel, you do see that, and it does exist. But if it's the president and he really, really wants to do it, ultimately, I think the Republicans in Congress cave. That's at least what's happened.
Well, listen to this statement made by Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri, who is a stalwart Trump supporter. He said about Greenland, Europe can't protect it. The Danes can't protect it. That's just an obvious fact at this point. And so it is in the strategic interest of the United States of America to pursue this. How many people believe that who say it, Leanne?
It's hard to know what's in people's hearts, but you have people.
Literally a year ago, if you went to every senator and said, name the top 100 issues facing the United States.
Yeah.
Literally nobody would put Greenland on the top 100.
No, it's people like Eric Schmidt. It's people like, Bernie Moreno. It's, oh my gosh,
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz. So there's a group of them who will do anything that the president says and it will be okay. They think that what he says is great and gospel. But there is a very slim majority in the House of Representatives. The House has
It's down to like 218 and 214.
Yeah, there's a 2-seat majority right now. The House has been more in lockstep as a whole than the Senate. But, Don Bacon, of course, he's retiring. He's one of the few that speaks up. But he said, look, invading an ally who we have a treaty with is a high crime and misdemeanor. And so he said that he has talked to other Republicans about impeachment, if that were to be the case. All of this is bluster right now. But it really did rattle members that this was the path that they were worried that he was just crazy enough to go down.
So the interesting thing, Peter, is that the president does seem somewhat sensitive to the bridge too far aspect of this. Is that fair?
Well, look, there are a number of instances in the last few weeks we've seen him go out there and make extravagant threats and then to back off, right? He said he was sending the Army or the military or the National Guard into Minneapolis, and then J.D. Vance said this week, we don't really need to invoke the Insurrection Act. It's going to be okay. He said that he was going to bomb Iran. right, if they killed protesters. Well, they killed protesters. They killed thousands of protesters. He did not bomb Iran. I'm not saying he should or shouldn't have. I'm just saying that he said he would, and then he didn't. Similarly, on Greenland, he was going to tariff Europe. He might use military force. Suddenly, he backs off. And I think this is lending itself to this feeling that Leanne sort of alluded to here, used the word crazy. There is this feeling in Washington among Republicans as well as Democrats that, is he off the rails here? Right? And it's hard to know when he is because he seems always to be erratic and mercurial and volatile. But is there a point where it's going so far that you have a guy in the White House, ultimate power because he seized it, all over the place?
And it'd be weird. It would be weird if Republicans suddenly discovered that the guy who lied about an election and instigated a soft coup was too crazy to conduct.
But I think this has been an interesting week in the sense that, don't mess with Greenland turns out to be the closest thing.
But I don't agree with that. I mean, we got some of the same reactions that Leanne got in talking to people on Capitol Hill as well. But that's a clarifying moment. You're talking about invading a NATO territory of a NATO ally. Yeah. They're declaring it a red line. They're really angry privately, but they won't say it publicly. Come on. That's not backbone. I think it has much more to do with these other external factors that he's responding to. I mean, he has to just assume at this point that Republicans are going to support him regardless of what he does, no matter how crazy it is.
Leanne, you were going to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say the public.
I think it's safe to say that because that's what we've seen. So I don't see why it would be any different, right? I think it's safe to say that Republicans are going to support him regardless of what he does. Now, you have had some Republicans that have argued against it. You have had Republicans that have voted against certain legislation. But for the most part, I've said that Donald Trump's cabinet likes to try to present a united front as much as they can, right? And we know why that is, because if they look weak to the American people, then everything kind of just falls to shambles. Even though some will say, well, they already look weak, they already look treacherous. Nonetheless, we know that this is the type of front that they like to present.
Public justification among Republicans was, look, this is just Donald Trump, this is bluster, this is a negotiating tactic, and that is what they hid behind. You're right. Congress has dispelled most of its authority and power, given it away to this administration over and over again. Speaker Mike Johnson has led that and allowed that. There is some rank and file frustration among Republicans over that fact too, but they aren't going to do anything about it, it seems.
Yeah, no, I mean, Idris, I want to ask you this, because we have you and you're an expert. It's the sort of question that I wouldn't even imagine asking a year ago. But what would be the long-term consequences of a semi-permanent hostility between Canada and the United States, economically, for starters?
I mean, they're massive trading partners with each other. So it would hurt the Canadians more because they're more dependent on us than we are on them. But it would hurt us as well. I mean, the fact that Carney took away the tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles gives an avenue for those vehicles to get into America because a lot of vehicles travel up and down the border. But there are all sorts of consequences as well for this rupture between the two. The fact that you have our closest trading partner now triangulating, coordinating with China, Qatar, other countries like that, that's not a situation that America wanted to be in. It is going to, in the pursuit of maintaining kind of hemispheric control and asserting rights over Greenland and Venezuela, it's going to lose a lot from probably its most important ally in North America. And that's quite something. I mean, the fact that Mark Carney would even say things like this. I mean, I think why the reception of his speech was so potent. That he called out also his European counterparts in saying that you've gone too far in accommodating this. You have to stand up. And Trump stopped saying the 51st state thing after Carney took over. He didn't respect Trudeau, and he kept saying it. Now that Carney came, he went to the White House, he showed a bit of spine. Trump backed off, and I think that Carney knows that.
I mean, we're actually seeing something that is very seldom seen in nature, an angry Canadian, right? We don't know the true latent power, right? It's fascinating to watch. Steve, step back and talk about America's alliances in Europe first. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being Churchill and FDR, and 10 being we're militarily invading Greenland. Where are we in the health of the post-World War II European order?
I mean, 9.5.
You think it's that?
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. Look, do you remember?
That's bad.
Remember, January of 2003, Donald Rumsfeld made an offhand remark in which he referred to France and Germany as old Europe. That created weeks-long diplomatic row that threatened.
All right, so shout out to Washington Week for that. I appreciate them for covering that. They did a great job. You guys can head over there and watch the remainder of that. So I want to move over to something before I go towards the snowstorm. Hold on here, guys. Let me pull it up. Okay, we had Trump eliminates. Where we at? Where is that clip at? All right, CBC News. Shout out to CBC News. Why Trump just blocked Canada from his board of peace? About that. Let's take a look at this. CBC News, we've covered it on the channel previously. Normally, I was covering a lot of Canadian news when, the whole Carney Pierre and a couple of others were running for next prime minister. So died down since then. Nonetheless, still love my Canadians. Shout out to Canada, second most watched country on my channel to the United States. So shout out to Canada. So let's take a look at this. Why Trump just blocked Canada from his board of peace?
I want to show you something. In Davos, Switzerland, there was this milestone moment, a ceremonial signing for Donald Trump's Board of Peace. Which, no worries if you don't exactly know what the Board of Peace is or does. I'll get into that in a moment. And I'm actually even going to assume that most people won't recognize most of these people. Like, we don't tend to talk much about the presidents of Uzbekistan or Kosovo, or the prime ministers of Mongolia or Armenia, or the foreign affairs ministers of Morocco or Saudi Arabia. But what is remarkable is who's not here. Where's the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain? Where's Canada in this family photo? Not there, I can tell you that much, and will not be for the foreseeable future, as per Trump's latest counterattack on Carney. The Board of Peace is withdrawing its invitation to you. And then you get this little dig here, calling Canada's now missed opportunity the most prestigious board of leaders ever assembled at any time. And I call this a counterattack because I suspect Trump's position in all of this might be Carney started it. The middle. And I call this a counterattack because I suspect Trump's position in all of this might be opportunity, the most prestigious board.
Now, shout out to Andrew Chang. I just wanted to rewind that so you guys could take a read if you want to, and then I'll just go forward.
Board of leaders ever assembled at any time. And I call this a counterattack because I suspect Trump's position in all of this might be Carney started it.
The middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
Let's talk about why Trump is excluding Canada in this way and why it's not clear to me how much Canada wants to be included in the first place. It was Mark Carney who went on the offensive first in Davos.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
He devoted not just part of his speech, but his entire speech to calling out America and how it is now failing much of the world, almost terrorizing it.
Great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage. Financial infrastructure as coercion. Supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
Trump's answer to that was twofold. First, make it personal.
I watched your prime minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us.
Then,
make it deadly serious.
Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
And Carney responded to that as well on his return home from Davos.
But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
And that brings us to today, where you have Trump effectively saying, well then, you can't join my new club. And Carney having said all along, well, we didn't even know much about your club to begin with.
With respects to the specifics of the Board of Peace, we haven't gone through all the details of the structure, how it's going to work, what financing is for, etc.
It's hard to say what all could even be encompassed in a Board of Peace that had no specific terms of reference at play, how frequently they would meet, the type of work that they would do together, how they would handle and manage disagreements that might take place internally.
Sort of a bunch of things that might give the Canadian government pause about.
And then when they're just kind of uninviting people, right? When President Trump is kind of going on social media to just kind of say, hey, by the way, yeah, you're uninvited and it's going to be one of the most prominent meetings that ever happened in history. It's like, oh, wow, that's how we're moving now, President Trump? Okay.
To any kind of permanent involvement in an organization like this.
And Canada's skepticism is not unique, but it is shared among a very specific group of players.
If you want to have an extraordinary quality of life, if you'd like to take 2026 and make it your best year ever.
Most European countries that have been invited to join the board have also so far held off on accepting because it's not really clear what this Board of Peace actually does. Originally, the advertised intent was to create a kind of steering committee for the reconstruction of Gaza. It was a part of Trump's 20-point plan, ending the war between Israel and Hamas through the creation of this entity that basically oversees everything, strategic oversight as Gaza transitions from conflict to peace and development. But when you look at which countries are included on this invite list for this board, I mean, first of all, that's a lot of countries from very far away who are meant to have a say in the reconstruction of Gaza. Second of all, Israel's a member, but to my knowledge, so far, there's no Palestinian representation here. And we have a few hints as to why the makeup of this board may not have Gaza as its only long-term focus. Exhibit A, what's reportedly in the board's charter, under purposes and functions, the stated goal of promoting stability, lawful governance, and enduring peace in areas affected or threatened by conflict. What's missing here is any mention of Gaza at all, and instead using this much broader language, which Trump has told Reuters is very intentional, that the board is going to start with Gaza and then do conflicts as they arise. So there's whatever that means. At minimum, this is a clear expansion of the board's mandate, and where membership is pay to play. A permanent seat on the board costs $1 billion, with a B, $billion cash, the proceeds of which are meant to help Gaza. But this is also something the Canadian government has been wary of since the start.
Canada wants money to have maximum impact. We still do not have unimpeded aid flows, humanitarian aid flows at scale to the people of Gaza. That is a precondition for moving forward on this.
Without clarity about whether or not the president would be determining how those funds are spent, whether or not the people actually affected by the conflict would be involved in some self-determination about what the rebuilding is going to look like. All of those would have surely been items that the government of Canada was concerned about and wished to clarify before proceeding.
And so the idea that, again, $1 billion would sort of be gifted over to this organization with no sort of ethical congressional oversight to be used as essentially the president sees fit. So even if the money is supposed to be earmarked for Gaza, I imagine it's not without the realm of possibility that some of that money could be diverted to other projects that would not actually benefit the actual people of Palestine.
And there's one other much bigger point of concern about joining this board, which goes back to what started this whole dispute in Davos.
When we only negotiate bilaterally with a hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty.
It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination.
Let's look once again at that map of countries invited to Trump's Board of Peace, but only show you the ones who've so far accepted the invitation. There's a huge wealth disparity here. Saudi Arabia has an economy 100 times bigger than Kosovo. There's also no common thread in governance. Argentina is a populist democracy. Azerbaijan is a dynastic autocracy. But these are all countries that you might think of as outsiders to the core club of agenda setters in the Western-led world order. They are emerging markets, more deal makers than rule makers. They're mostly not Europe. They're everywhere else.
A lot of times emerging markets and rising countries look at membership in institutions as a legitimation all its own.
I think for many of them, it is a strategic calculus that it is better to be in the room, to have access and proximity, especially to the US president right now, to be able to have FaceTime with President Trump, connection to his team, while concurrently dealing with these specific issues with the Board of Peace.
His administration, his worldview is quote unquote anti-globalist. He views kind of global institutions, existing global institutions, as sort of corrupt organizations that can't get anything done. So he's spoken about how this Board of Peace could be a way of really replacing the United Nations. Ultimately, there are too many unknowns to draw any sweeping conclusions here. The mandate of the board, subject to change. The makeup of the board, also subject to change. And that's important for Canada because as quickly as Trump withdrew this country's invitation to join the board, he can also reissue it on a whim. So I'm not going to guess at whether any of this...
No guidelines, nothing to really state what he'll follow as to why he could reissue it or when he would reissue it, or even if he did take it away, how long it would be going for. It's so subjective that it's annoying. It really is.
Spat is of any consequence. Inclusion, exclusion, we'll see.
I haven't talked to the president lately or got a reading as to how often they are, but those channels were established, and I think they both realize that it's not really hard for them to pick up the phone and call each other. So I'm sure that's still happening.
But I will say, this barring of Canada from the board is very clearly escalatory and not de-escalatory. This is inflaming the fight between these two countries, not extinguishing it. So, if nothing else, what we can glean from all of this is that there are rough waters ahead.
Hey, shout out to Andrew Chang on CBS News. You guys check him out when you get a chance. All right, before we go to the snowstorm, let's head over to DRM News. Shout out to them. Gavin Newsom, full discussion. Gavin Newsom slams Trump's authoritarianism. An explosive WEF interview. All right, we're not going to watch this in its entirety because it's over 30 minutes, but we'll watch some of this. Let's check out Gavin Newsom. Oh, man, I know some of you guys in the chat going to go crazy with Gavin Newsom in the chat. Let's go.
I'm going to give you 5 different things to do today, but the one that could triple your business is going to take 5 seconds. I wonder if we can...
For joining us, and I actually wanted to start. You tweeted last or posted last night.
All right.
That this was the conversation, and yes, thank you for joining us, Governor. Thank you so much to the WEF for hosting this. This is the conversation that Donald Trump tried to cancel. Don't miss it, 11:30 Pacific. Thank you to our Pacific Time viewers. In fact, it's a different conversation in the WEF's defense. It was the privately run USA House, which is endorsed by the State Department, funded by big American companies, which did pull an event with you with Fortune yesterday.
Yeah.
And I guess I wondered to begin with, what does that tell you about the way the U.S. private sector, which is really very heavily represented here,
So you think I'll get me in trouble right off the bat?
Political moment.
I looked at I admit, looking at the list, McKinsey and Microsoft and a few California companies. So what the hell are they even talking about? But it's indicative, I think, of America, for those of you who are not American. And it gives you a sense of what we're up against and what's happening
across my country. And what happened here in Davos. I was going to speak last night. It was a well-established event at the USA House. A simple conversation, discussion. After Trump's speech, they made sure that I didn't. They made sure it was canceled. And that's what's happening in the United States of America. Freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. It's America in reverse. They're censoring historical facts. They're rewriting history. They're censoring books, 340 books, libraries, and in schools banned in the United States of America. You're watching institutions, any institution of independent thinking is under assault and attack by the Trump administration. You're seeing what's playing out in the streets of American cities, what played out in California, the second largest city in the United States of America. 4,000 National Guard were federalized. 700 active duty Marines were not sent overseas. They were sent to my largest city in the state of California. Masked men. Guy Greg Bovino, dressed up. It's as if he literally went on eBay and purchased SS garb. Greg Bovino, secret police, private army, masked men, people disappearing quite literally, no due process, windows being smashed.
And you know what's funny? As crazy as Gavin Newsom might be driving some people right now, you have a young crowd of young men that are very willing and ready to vote for him right now. Like, they literally have gone on the record to say it. I mean, you've had Nick Fuentes say it. You've had Clavicular say it. You've had Sneeko say it. And some of these guys are, they're very young, you know, but they feel like because he is a white man who is in great shape and he has a European wife, that he is actually a better or a more suitable pick for the United States than J.D. Vance, because his wife, his children. I mean, now this is a small group of people that feel this way, as far as I can tell. But I do think it's just so shallow and so topical. It's so ridiculous to me that these are some of the reasons why these guys would even vote for, you know, this way without even looking at policy or legislation. But I mean, again, it is a very young group of people.
Seatbelts on, literally just sort of cut off, people dragged in the streets, kids separated from family, knocking on doors, racially profiling American citizens. So is it surprising the Trump administration didn't like my commentary and wanted to make sure that I was not allowed to speak? No. It's consistent with this administration and their authoritarian tendencies. Forgive me. These are objective facts.
But I will say, this was not, just to be clear, this was a private enterprise endorsed by the State Department, but these are a lot of decisions are being made by private companies right now. This is a capital. This is probably the central global gathering of CEOs. And I guess I wonder if you can give me a review of how you see these folks. And you know your way around this world. How do you see those people behaving?
Society becomes how we behave. We are our behaviors. We're not bystanders in this world. The world we're experiencing happened on our watch. So in the relationship to your question, yeah, they're complicit in some respects to this moment. You know, forgive me, you brought up a tweet, but part of my approach has been a little more aggressive than perhaps a lot of American politicians. I created a Patriot site. On the site, you can go, there are knee pads that are available to purchase. The last round of knee pads sold out, just as our law firms are selling out. Many American universities are selling out, and yes, many corporate leaders are selling out to this administration, selling out our values, selling out our future, selling out what makes America great, and breaks my heart. And people need to stand up. People need to, courage in their damn convictions. We're the 250th anniversary. The United States of America this year. It's the 250th anniversary. The best of the Roman Republic, Greek democracy, co-equal branches of government, the rule of law, popular sovereignty. Tell me that reflects the America you read about today. There's no rule of law. It's the rule of dawn. I hope it's open for Europeans. It's dawning on you. It's not the rule of law. You don't have co-equal branches of government. You have a supine Congress. You don't have a Speaker of the House. It doesn't exist. Popular sovereignty being challenged every single day by voter suppression, trying to rig elections. I mean, heck, Donald Trump tried to steal the election, the last election, tried to light democracy on fire, and then pardoned everyone that participated in that. Is anyone paying attention to what the hell is going on in the United States of America? So my state of mind is a little different, perhaps, than many others. I won't be complicit at this moment. I won't. I can't. I can't look my kids in the eyes. And so I'm just blessed that I get to represent a state that's larger than the size of 21 U.S. states combined. Where 27% of us are foreign-born, we practice pluralism. That's a word you haven't heard in America in a year. Where we dominate in every critical category in terms of energy and daring and entrepreneurialism and innovation. And look, give me a category. In California outperforms fourth largest economy in the world. And so we can punch above our weight. We can come here with formal authority and a little moral authority. And I tell you, we need a little moral authority. Our body politic in the United States of America today.
Governor, how do you balance?
Good morning, everybody.
Sorry, I figured we would. Yeah.
If you're watching this right now, I pray that you don't just scroll past. I hope that when your heart hears that 1 in 3 people on this earth do not have access to clean water, you don't just feel bad. I hope you actually do something about it, because right now, you can make that change. With just $100, you can give 100 people clean water for 5 years. Humanity is on the ground, bringing real solutions, wells, hand pumps, solar power filtration systems to those who need it the most. Donate now to humanity.
You're a tough interview, Governor. And when I think you have chosen a sort of, if you can't beat them, join them strategy to the way you're talking about this stuff. You're running around distributing knee pads to CEOs, and I think it does.
Handing them out.
And it
I do have a few, if you'd like.
And honestly, it sounds.
By the way, I'm not kidding. They're the new Trump Signature Series knee pads. Yeah, and they are available online. I told you the last one sold out. And I just want to say this is a serious moment.
Oh my God! Why does he have those with him? Yo, why does he have red knee pads and they're for CEOs? Like, this guy's got to be kidding me right now.
But we laugh. Anyway.
Like, why is he walking around with them? That's my problem. Why does he have, like, them in his pocket with him? Oh, man, Gavin Newsomes.
These are available and in bulk, too.
But I want to read you a couple of things the U.S. government has said about you in the last 24 hours or so.
The U.S. government.
The Treasury Secretary described you as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken. The White House Communications Director.
That was the U.S. Secretary of Treasury.
I have a couple more, and then you can respond. The White House Communications Director called you Gavin Newsomes, and an official White House account, federal government account, described you with I'd say very online sexual slur that people here probably don't want to hear at 8:30 in the morning. And you're in some sense responding in kind, and
fire with fire.
Do you think? Should you? I mean, is that kind of discourse from you, from them, good for America?
Oh, it's deeply unbecoming. Come on, of course it is. It's not what we should be doing. But you've got to point out the absurdity. You've got to put a mirror up to this. This is madness. President, you see what he's saying about European leaders, you talking down to people, talking past people. I mean, look, the comments he made yesterday we're not even discussing, because you're discussing all the other comments about windmills or whatever else was happening. Well, he talked about Somalia's community. This is not normal. It's a deviation of normalcy. We've got to call it out. So I put a mirror up to Trump and Trumpism in all caps. And it was ironic because Pravda, Fox News in America, others they got offended by it. They said, well, where's his mother to wash his mouth out with soap? I said, well, where the hell have you been? You've never said a word about Trump dressing up as the Pope, tweeting out and cosplaying on the world stage. And so the Treasury Secretary talked about a Barbie doll. It was as if he was reading a diary and had just broken up with someone. I mean, that was the Secretary of Treasury using valuable time yesterday on the world stage. Some sexual, thank you for not sharing that on the official White House account. We're deeply in their head. I think the affordability agenda appears to be, I'm living rent-free in the Trump administration's head.
The most talked about speech here in Davos actually wasn't Donald Trump's address yesterday. It was the Canadian Prime Minister.
Incredible speech.
It was Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney the day before, who talked about, I don't know, in large terms, the middle powers, everybody except for China and the U.S., really had to adapt permanently to a world without American leadership. I guess I wonder, I mean, that's in some sense a pretty anti-American point of view. That's a view that America is gone from the world stage, that whether the next president is J.D. Vance, Gavin Newsom, somebody else, this isn't a deviation, as you said, this is permanent.
Well,
do you buy that? Do you buy Carney's point of view?
I felt there was moments, and forgive me, I should be cautious making this statement, I don't want it to be overanalyzed, but when I was listening to the EU president speak, there were moments where I said, that used to be us. I remember that. So am I surprised by what Carney did? Quite the contrary. I thought it was, I had more leaders from the United States quietly say, I mean, not publicly, I'm not saying it publicly, the transcript of that speech saying, wow. They were, I mean, Gavin Trump said yesterday, he brought it up. You know everything about Trump because it's what's not in the teleprompter. That tells you everything you need to know about where Trump's head is on things. It was incredibly effective. The markets were more effective. Markets. It's not Mother Nature, thought of most powerful force on earth with Mother Nature, but it's the markets, particularly the Trump administration. Combine that with the comments of Macron, combine that with the EU Commissioner, but the clarity that came from Prime Minister of Canada. But the fact that he went to China, came back with a deal, started introducing low-cost, high-quality electric vehicles, not made in Michigan, Detroit, but overseas into Canada. It says everything you know about the recklessness of America's foreign policy. Everything you need to know. You know it intimately, but it's a remarkable thing to break down 80 plus years of alliances. It takes decades and decades to build trust in organizations, the architecture of that. It takes weeks, tweets, hours, minutes sometimes to destroy it. Destruction is not strength. The Trump administration is weakness masquerading as strength. And people need to understand that. That's reflected in the tweets. That's reflected in canceling people. That's reflected in sending masked men into the American cities. It's reflected at this moment. So I respect what Carney did because he had courage of convictions. He stood up. And I think we need to stand up in America and call this out with clarity. We can lose our republic as we know it. Our country become unrecognizable in a matter of months, just not years. It is code red, blinking red in the United States of America. So forgive me, I feel this with passion, some indignancy, as someone frankly has taken it for granted all of these years. And it's why I came here to Davos to call it out. And I wish there were more of us doing the same because there are more of us. And on that, forgive me, I want you to know Donald Trump is an historic president. That's absolutely correct. He's historically unpopular in the United States of America. In every category, he's underwater. He will be remembered in years, not decades. He's not going to run again. Time of life denies that. Not a state of mind, but time of life. But we need to manifest that. And we need to do the hard work. And that hard work includes the difficult work of coming to Davos and calling that out. This is not where I want to be spending, I love you all, my time. Anyway, it's an extension of the conviction I feel about this moment.
A lot of people among, I think, aren't American, maybe be concerned for America, but are making decisions about their own politics, their own countries. And what Carney's core point was, this is a rupture, this isn't an anomaly, and there's no going back.
Shout out to WCAT Bingo says, electric cars don't work in freezing weather. Yeah, so for those getting ready for the snowstorm, right, that's coming mainly on the East Coast, probably not the most excited about the electric vehicle right now.
And do you think that a different American leader can bring?
I think these relationships are in dormancy, they're not dead. I don't use those binary terms. Don't fall prey to that. That's a bit hyperbolic, and I'm prone to a little of that at times. Dormancy. We can he's an invasive species, Donald Trump. He's not. He is. He took over the Republican Party. They're just, he's got, a few of them. Lindsey Graham, speaking of the knee pads. I'm sorry. This is tough stuff. It's tough stuff. I don't recognize these people any longer. I used to respect Lindsey. I mean, Lindsey, you think what I'm saying about Trump's tough. How about what Lindsey Graham said about Trump? How about the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio?
Do you think...
I mean, these are the same people. And this is why for things to change, we need to change.
Do you think
and that's why I'm changing my approach. And again, I'm grateful you all took that.
Well, I mean, I suppose, do you think post-Trump there's a path back? Do you see this ever the kind of insult politics that you're doing here? Which you said you don't really enjoy it. You kind of seem to.
I'm just putting a mirror up. You got to. I was doing my 10-point plans before, and I don't think any of you would have been here this morning had I done that.
Oh, they would have been here.
No, because it wasn't working. No, everyone's trying to figure this out.
How do you Mark Carney crowd?
Yeah, no, but it's how do you communicate? How do you respond to this moment? And for me, it's about iteration. It's an entrepreneurial spirit. It's a very California mindset. You got to keep increasing the number of tries. And I was trying everything, wasn't working, wasn't breaking through. Democratic Party, writ large, wasn't breaking through. And we decided the only way to address Trump is quite literally to fight fire with fire. I did an initiative, Prop 50 in California, was to reflect the fact that Donald Trump called an American politician and said in the middle of the decade to the governor of the state of Texas, I am entitled, Greg Abbott, to 5 seats. And I need you to redraw district lines, mid-year redistricting, to rig the 2026 election before one vote is cast. What the Trump administration expected we were going to do, as good Democrats do, we might write an op-ed.
See, I mean, I know why he's doing what he's doing because he's pandering to the crowd, but I'm like, come on, Gavin. Come on, man. Don't be petty, Gavin. Don't be petty. Looks like a sleazy car salesman. Yeah, no kidding. Shout out to Jason. That's exactly, that's the vibe Gavin Newsom always gives off, right? Like car salesman. Man, it's the slick back hair, bro. It's the slick back hair. That's what does it. Like, dude, 2020. He's a 2028 potential presidential candidate for the Democrats. And like I said, there's a group of younger men that have already said that they would vote for him over J.D. Vance because they're like, who wants a fat president? And I'm just like, oh my God, are you serious? Like this, literally, are you for real right now?
And we may, all go out and just say, this is just so wrong, and all of us would be applauding and say, yes. And, as he's consolidating power. Instead, we went out and we redraw our maps. And we also drew a line in the sand. And I think that's what's required at this moment. And he assesses out weakness like no one else. That's his great strength. That's his gift. But you punch back. You fight fire with fire. You display conviction and strength. It's a different relationship. And so my relationship to this moment is reflected in that. I'm not naive. These guys are going to try to take me down. Not just my state. I'm not naive about what I've said this morning and how that will be reflected in the official White House account. I'm not naive about the fact that he threatened to prosecute the Fed chief in the United States of America that has subpoena against another sitting governor, Tim Walz, who's literally going after his enemies with the FBI and the DOJ, and these power ministries. I'm not naive about any of this. I'm not naive about the corruption and the graft at scale we've never seen in American history. I'm not naive about folks writing billion-dollar checks to Witkoff, to Jared Kushner, for this new peace deal they're announcing today. I'm not naive about the fact that the President of the United States made $1.5 billion+ in the last 12 months, personally. How in the hell are we putting up with this? We have to call this out. Unprecedented in American history. Happening in real time on our watch. We have to be held to a higher level, all of us, myself notably, to a higher level of accountability at this moment.
Hey, I need you to stop scrolling because one of the most important wildlife refuges is about to be traded away. So
I think one of the main reasons that that he has been successful is because the Democratic Party is so discredited in the eyes of so many voters. I have a couple of questions about that. One is big picture about California. People, you are in the midst of a enormous economic boom right now, and yet the state is on one hand running deficits, and on the other not always delivering services that it's, from education to healthcare that your citizens are delighted with. And I guess I wonder how are voters looking at California, looking at New York, looking at Chicago, supposed to say, yeah, this is the model we want?
Well, I'm proud of my state. We have more Fortune 500 companies than any other state in America, more scientists, engineers, more Nobel laureates, my state, than any state in America, the finest system of higher public education in the world. We have 18% of the world's R&D, China 22%, Germany 21%, California 18% of the world's R&D. We're the center of the universe as it relates to AI. 432
is
of the
wonderful, but what about the governance?
Well, the governance, we're one of the lowest uninsured rates in America. You mentioned healthcare. We just did our State of Education report, which showed in every category, every classroom, making progress with our test scores. Our investments are paying off. Just did a big State of the State.
The idea that these blue states have trouble, are spending more for less results.
I don't know. Higher life expectancy, lower infant mortality, lower gun death rates, more productivity, higher wages, higher quality of life. $83.1 billion. That was the net contribution that we provided to the federal government versus red state like Texas. That was a taker state of $73.1 billion. So we're producing more, and people are, I think, creating more opportunities. So, look, are there problems?
For instance, you're supporting the mayor of LA for re-election after these terrible fires that a lot of your citizens do feel was part in part because of government mismanagement. Do you just reject that narrative that the government has anything to do with these things?
I absolutely accept that we all should be held to a higher level of accountability in terms of our governance, and I think there's many areas of reforms that are necessary, so many areas of reforms that are underway. We can get into the specifics of any one of these issues, but the general notion that in the middle of winter, with 100-mile-an-hour winds, we're attached to a fire, that somehow, by the way, there were 16 major fires in Southern California over a 2-week period, that somehow that had to do with fire hydrants is rather preposterous. And it was shapeshift because of the complete bullshit that came from Donald Trump and Elon Musk, saying somehow the sprinklers didn't work and the fire hydrants didn't work because we didn't turn on a valve in Northern California. These are literal words from the Trump administration. So I do reject that. Do I reject this notion of being self-critical about governance and management across the spectrum? No, that's fair game.
And probably the biggest governance issue, policy issue, fueling right-wing parties in the United States around the country is immigration. And I think liberal parties, again, in the U.S. and around the world, had a posture of welcoming immigrants that it just turned out a lot of Americans, a lot of Californians, but more Americans are unhappy with. Illegal immigration, the out-of-control border, but also it's the last issue on which Trump, though his numbers have been sliding, remained somewhat popular. And I guess I wonder, do you think that your party went too far, or that you went too far? And I think, for instance, in extending Medi-Cal to the California healthcare program to undocumented immigrants. Like, do you?
Well, two different
I guess
questions.
on the big picture and the small picture, do you feel like you went too far?
Two different questions. Do I believe in universal health care? Yes, regardless of pre-existing conditions, ability to pay, and your status. I campaigned on that. We delivered on that, and I'm proud of that. We're one of 16 states to provide care to people regardless of immigration status. By the way, we have universal care in emergency rooms, and you pay the price on the back end, at least Americans, for that, regardless of your immigration status. But the issue of immigration, Donald Trump is very unpopular on immigration. He's successful on the border. Separate issue, connected. And yes, the Democratic Party failed in the last few years on the border. And yes, I was critical of that. And yes, I put our own National Guard on the border the day I got elected into office in 2019. Sent 394 National Guard down to the border. And we were very, very pointed with the Biden administration that we were failing to deliver border security for a number of years. On the larger immigration issue, I happen to share the same old office of Ronald Reagan, governor of California, who decided in his last day in office at the White House, and he gave a love letter to immigrants from around the world. It was a love letter to America, and what distinguishes America from the rest of the globe. He talked about Lady Liberty's torch. And he talked about the vibrancy of newcomers, people coming all over the globe for riches and new beginnings, becoming Americans, and what defines our great nation. And that's the spirit that defines my mindset. Getting first-round draft choices around the rest of the world is what makes California so vibrant. It's because of that diversity, and it's because of people's willingness to dare and to match up with ideas and perspectives and backgrounds to come in to make a go of it that has made California the fourth largest GDP in the world. But we have failed on the border, and Donald Trump is failing on immigration. His economic policy is not complicated. It's tariffs, which is a regressive tax. It's mass deportations, which is having a major impact on supply chains. And you've seen the American jobless rate. You're seeing it growing, the unemployment rate in America. Besson didn't talk about this. They had the worst jobs numbers in the first year of the Trump administration outside a recession since 2003. 49,000 jobs a month. The Biden administration last year was averaging 168,000 jobs a month. Inflation is not lowering. It's still at 2.7%. Ask folks what a pound of beef costs in the United States of America or a brand new car. Everything you heard yesterday was BS. And it's impacted by these policies of tariffs that are impacting ranchers and farmers and small business folks. A major tax that they celebrate, collecting, which is ironic from the Republican Party. And the third leg of the stool is a massive tax cut away from the wealthy and the privileged, taxing now the burden on small businesses and working folks. That's the policy, easily described, of America's economic strategy. And it's a failed strategy, and the impacts of that strategy are being felt all throughout the United States of America, including my state that has been disproportionately impacted by these policies. So I'm very critical of those. I'm critical of our assault on institutions of higher learning, research, institutions that have literally been, they're part of that formula for success. The rest of the world gets that. And he's putting sand in the gears across that spectrum. And in California, again, is fighting and pushing back.
And some of those first-round draft picks got incredible contracts and are now made quite a lot of money and are now very freaked out, threatening to leave California over a proposal that, just to be clear, you oppose for a sort of one-time tax on the wealth of the very, very, very wealthy Californians. And I guess I want to ask you two questions. Yeah. One is, I was talking to somebody progressive here who said, this guy's basically a fake populist. He talks a good game about the billionaires. Here is an actual proposal that they're unhappy about, and you're on the other side. You're standing with, Elon Musk and David Sachs on this. Why is that?
Well, one-time wealth tax at a state level that almost exclusively goes to solve one problem, healthcare, and not solving for larger issues like education, supporting police officers and firefighters, and starves the rest of the general fund, that has had already the impact of people moving out of our state and impacting then the annual income tax collection, is not something I support. And by the way, a vast majority of labor does not support as well. And that's reflected in my opposition. What's not reflected in my opposition, quite the contrary, is my advocacy for progressive taxes. That does tax the wealthy disproportionately.
Do you have a theory for having...
Shout out to Krusty Krab. He said, unclear how will play with his lesbian base government job. Somebody said, Krusty Krab said he's avoiding the sexual assault scandal. Oh, yeah, he is.
A strong advocate for that.
Do you have a theory on how to tax this?
All right, guys, let's move on to some snowstorm news, because that's important. Just to take a look at it for a little bit, then we'll jump off and get ready for the live stream in a couple hours for Saturday. So let's jump right in.
Planning to move? Choose Pods, the most awarded container moving company. Whether you're moving across town or...
We are increasingly concerned day after day as confidence grows about what will probably become the storm that defines the entire winter And it may be a storm that many remember for many decades that will develop Friday, Saturday, and Sunday across parts of the southern plains, much of the south, the mid-Atlantic, and it will also impact the Northeast with significant snow in some areas as well. So we want to get into the specifics here, some of the mechanics behind the storm, and what are we confident in? What are some of the questions that remain at this point? So we'll look at the models, and we'll also look at the general storm overview here as we kind of summarize our expectations at this point. So just off the bat, here is our big picture, kind of an early look at Friday through Saturday morning as the storm begins to take over here in the southern plains. So this is kind of the starting block for our storm. It's going to be a marathon of a storm. We're expecting to see significant ice in parts of Texas and widespread significant snow in areas around Oklahoma and northern Arkansas. And we're very concerned about just tremendous amount of sleet and freezing rain. The freezing rain, the southern half of the ice zone, is going to be a huge problem, and maybe even into Austin as well. But Atlanta's in this conversation too, and up into parts of northern Alabama. Freezing rain glazes the surface of the power lines, the tree limbs. Is going to bring many people to a point of no power, no electricity, as we're dealing with a major ice storm. Ice storms are tough because they're so widespread, as opposed to individual, maybe convective thunderstorms that produce narrow paths of power outages. When you have many states or multiple areas the size of multiple states without power in many areas, with hundreds of thousands per state, if not millions per state, without power, there's just such a huge volume of power lines to repair, and the outages continue for long periods of time. And it's going to be really cold. Then in the Northeast, we're expecting to see snow reach many areas along and even north of I-81, I-95, potentially as far north as I-90 there and beyond into New England. So let's look at the models here. What's behind all this? Why are we producing a forecast with such a widespread, high-impact southern storm? Well, we're dealing with, number one, very cold air that's in place, and it's going to be kind of reinvigorated with a new Arctic front that's going to produce more chilling down into the south. You're going to have temperatures around 50 during late Tuesday night, Wednesday morning in Dallas, but you're going to be below that for daytime weather on Friday. And overall, a couple of players on the field here. We've got a strong zone of low pressure southwest of California. We have a huge lobe of low pressure with, again, disturbances rotating around the base of this through parts of the eastern and central U.S. here. This area of low pressure in the southwest is going to provide lift. We've got moisture from the Gulf. In the low levels, it's going to be flowing north. So a lot of different players are on the field here to produce big problems. And as this southwestern disturbance moves east, that's going to enhance the lift. And you can even see some jet stream energy even as far east as Tennessee tied to this as a disturbance rotates through the base of that trough. So we're going to see a prolonged period of time in which we're going to have a lot of rising motion across the south. When we look at the humidity levels, this is technically precipitable water, the moisture content in the vertical column of the atmosphere from the ground all the way up to the top of the troposphere. And we have plenty of moisture here near the Gulf. And you can see the low level, technically these are winds at 850 millibars, about a mile up into the atmosphere, flow out of the south and south-southwest at those altitudes. And again, a truly Arctic front pressing south with those strong winds behind us, driving that cold air all the way down to the Gulf. So we've got the lift coming in from that southwestern storm. We've got the moisture surging north. And we have, again, a strong Arctic front just plowing south with ridiculously cold air into the upper Midwest with, again, tremendously cold air in place here, the coldest air of the season. It's been a cold winter at times. This is going to be colder than anything we've experienced yet up there in the Midwest and across the interior Northeast. So here we go into Friday, and you can begin to see initially rain, even up into Sherman, Texas, Friday morning. But look at this as the cold press continues to drive south. We're going to be seeing it change over from rain to ice and ice to snow into more and more of Texas. So in the pink zone here, that is a forecast of freezing rain. In that peach color, we're looking at sleet, and then in the blue zone, we're looking at snow. And this is Friday evening. That's the GFS. Here is the European there's unfortunately good agreement here. And then here is the Canadian model. Now, this is not color-coded the same, but the critical thickness levels here, that little 540 thickness line, that's a sign the cold air is present here as well. The precip is present as well in the Canadian model. So we're going to be dealing with the same setup here. Saturday, this expands east.
Forecasters tracking a monster winter storm that could become historic and catastrophic with dangerous impacts expected for tens of millions of Americans this weekend. Buckets of snow, crippling ice, and frigid temps threaten to paralyze the South, Midwest, and East Coast. Joining us now is the director of the National Weather Service, Ken Graham. Director Graham, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Jan. Thanks for having me on today. So thank you.
When you hear words like historic and catastrophic, that's going to get some people's attention. What makes this storm different from what we typically see?
I think part of it is just the size. I mean, I was looking at it even this morning. We have our website, weather.gov, and I looked at it this morning just trying to take in the big picture. And we have watches and warnings stretching from New Mexico to New England, 2,000 miles. So more than half the country is involved with this winter weather event. So I think one part of it, we get ice, we get snow. Nothing's off the chart historic in some of the amounts, but what's off the chart to me is just the sheer size of the storm.
It is humongous. Talk about some of the timelines here, when and where the storm's going to start to hit the hardest.
Yeah, it looks like things are going to be starting up today. So looking at Texas, you start looking at Oklahoma. So today you'll start seeing an increase in some of that precipitation. The cold's already filtering into the country from the north. So the cold temperatures are going to be in place. So you're going to start, the precipitation begins today, progressing over the weekend. So into Saturday, Oklahoma. Saturday night, you start thinking of Arkansas, you think of Louisiana. And then Saturday night and into Sunday, even Sunday night in New England, you start looking at the I-95 corridor, it's going to start seeing some significant snowfall and even sleet. So at that time, that's a progression. So it's a weekend event, and it's going to be significant air travel, road travel, just significant impacts all across the board.
Also significant cold, a major factor here. How dangerous could these frigid temperatures be, and what should people know about the risk of power outages and heating failures?
Yeah, we're starting to use language like, especially the areas East Texas, Arkansas, and the South, where you're going to get the freezing rain. So we predict a half inch to an inch of freezing rain in some of those areas. That's catastrophic. That's trees coming down. That's power outages. And you mentioned the cold, Jan. That's part of the problem here too. Is the cold isn't going away anytime soon. So once all that ice falls, and then you start having zero wind chills, you have temperatures well below freezing all the way to the Gulf Coast. The ice isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So those power outages could be prolonged in some places, especially rural areas where you can't get trucks in there with the tree.
That's not something that's good. I am not looking forward to that. Kept dog, you're alone here. Guess trolling is slow. Yeah, it's because here trolling is not a big thing. I let you guys come in. I don't censor anybody. Like, I want you guys to share your opinions in the chat. I tell people all the time, if you jump in my chat and you're like nigger or you're like F Trump, you're going to get banned, because either you're going to flag the AI mod or one of the other mods are going to just kick you out. But I prefer to leave people in, be interactive in the chat. I don't ban you guys. But I mean, trolling is just not a thing, because I don't stand for it. It's stupid anyway. I'm like, dude, I like to deal with educated people. So, like, when people troll, it's like my people are they're very good. They're very disciplined. They're just going to either kick them out of the chat. They're not going to get much of a spotlight here. But shout out to you guys, because either way, I feel like I still have one of the best. Well, not only do I have one of the best live streams when I have them, but I still feel like I have one of the best chats, because my chats they're just real. So shout out to you guys.
Freeze down. I would be surprised some people won't have power for possibly a week. So we got to be prepared for that.
And that's really scary when you talk about sub-zero, sub-freezing temperatures from some of these areas that aren't used to this. We've seen, the forecast change a few times as the storm does come into focus. Not too dramatically, though. Why are winter storms like this particularly hard to track, even with updated technology?
Well, I was director of the Hurricane Center, and I found it was easier to predict a hurricane than it is winter weather. It really is.
Wow.
Because there's so many factors that come into a winter weather event. You got to have the cold. You have to have some sort of lifting mechanism to lift the air up to cause the precipitation. And you have to have moisture. So in this case, three things coming together. One of them is the cold air. We got it. Check mark. We got the cold air in place. The other one's a low pressure off the Pacific, and now it's in the desert Southwest. That's going to be moving across the southern United States, providing that lift. And the other one is in the Gulf of America, about 10 to 12,000 feet, there's a warm area, bringing up some moisture into the system. That's what's going to cause some of the moisture involved with the freezing rain. So we have thrown everything at this, Jan. We have aircraft. We've actually sent aircraft to the Pacific to look at the low pressure out there. We have aircraft at several different altitudes in the Gulf of America to start looking at where's the moisture, how much moisture there is. So a very difficult forecast, getting the observations we need to get into the models to make the predictions.
Do you expect any big changes in the forecast models right now?
I think you're going to see very consistent in the forecast models. What you can see is these small, faster, slower, 30, 40 miles in either direction. So anybody that's on the border of you getting freezing rain or snow, those type of things could slide around 40 or 50 miles. But at this point, it's all about getting ready. Yeah. At this point is you're going to get winter weather, whether it's snow, whether it's sleet, whether it's the freezing rain. You got to be ready. It's going.
Freezing rain is the worst because that's the ice, and that's what's really dangerous. All right, Director of the National Weather Service, Ken Graham, thank you for joining us and for the work your team is doing. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Jan.
God, man, that's so annoying. Like, dude, I already have a cold advisory right now. Come on, man. My mentor at work today, he was telling me up where he's at, he's going to get like 3 to 4, probably like 4 feet. I'm like, oh man, come on. I mean, I'm not worried about it. With both of my vehicles, I can get through the snow, no problem. If anything, for me, the snow is a good time, so I don't worry about it. Even if it's a lot of snow, it's like that's fine. Like I just whichever vehicle, depending on how much snow it is, that's the one I use. But it's like, man, the no power. Like I'm hoping that doesn't happen. That's crazy work. Like that can't happen, especially for days at a time. But I'll keep you guys posted. I will see you guys in a couple hours for the live stream on Saturday. A lot of things got canceled. Normally, I have a men's group at my church Saturday mornings that I go to every single Saturday. You guys don't see me Saturday mornings because I do things like that during the day. But there's other drivers, bro. It's just crazy, man. Like, oh, man, I'm mad, man. Freezing rain is a problem, too, because that means there's a lot of accidents. So, yeah, a lot of things got canceled. So, you guys will see me early on the live stream tomorrow. We're not going to go live only late. And also, we're going to be tracking the storm. So, yeah, we'll be tracking the horrible snowstorm. I love the snow, but I don't love the idea of no electricity. That's just diabolical. That's not cool. But nonetheless, you know, I'm a Marine, so I'll survive. I'm not worried about it. My wife is not looking forward to that. She's like, oh, God, not in the wild. And I'm like, babe, it's not the wild. It's just no electricity. Any PS5 games? No, I don't have a PS5 right now. I'm working on getting one. I haven't had a PlayStation in some time. I just got my Xbox back not too long ago. But I usually don't choose between a PlayStation and Xbox. I usually just buy both because I like both. So I had the PlayStation first. I had the very, very first PlayStation. You guys remember the gray one with the circle door, you know, and you like push it and then like the little circle comes up and you put the CD in it. I had that one first. And then what did the first Xbox look like? Why don't I remember this? Oh, man. Why do I remember it being like black or like gray or something like that? It was something like that. And then like the style or the dimensions or the shape of it changed, right? Yeah, so I usually don't pick between the two of them. I like both of them. I like PlayStation and I like Xbox, and I play both of them. Yeah, guys, snowstorms, man. I love snowstorms because being from New York, so like I'm not currently in the state of New York. That's where I'm from. And New York's about to get hit hard. I'm so upset. Like the last time New York got hit the way it sounds like it was about to get hit, I think it was probably like 1995. It was something like that. I don't think I was more than 10 years old. And I remember that snowstorm because New York, I mean, when it snows in New York, if you know, you know. Like, they have the trucks, they have the Department of Sanitation. They got everybody out there early on the road. So a lot of the times when New York gets a lot of snow, it doesn't even look like it snowed there. But if it comes the way it came a couple of years ago, it looked crazy back then. I remember that. I never saw that much snow in New York City in my life. And just based on what I'm hearing right now, they don't sound like they're going to get as much as some parts of northern Pennsylvania. They're about to get slammed. It's about to be over for them. And that's where one of my mentors, I think his cabin's much northern Pennsylvania is where he's at. And it's like they're about to get a lot. Like, we're talking about, I know New York might get, I know they said something maybe like 2 feet. If anybody from New York is in the chat, put it in the chat what they said. But I think my wife said that she heard something like 22 inches or maybe 24 in New York. I know in northern PA, they're looking at like 4 feet. Yeah, certain parts of Jersey is high. Going down, you got Delaware, you got Pennsylvania, you got Delaware, you got Maryland. It's ridiculous. Like, it's like those places are about to get slammed. And it snows a lot in Maryland because I've actually resided in the state of Maryland before. Shout out to Maryland. I've lived in Annapolis before. And it's like, dude, Maryland is another state where I've never seen so much snow in my life, where I'm like, dude. A lady I used to work with, she's retired now. She went out to Colorado with her son. She was from New England, and me and my wife, we like New England a lot. That's probably one of the places where I would want to like buy a cabin or a vacation home. And she said it snows a lot in New England. She said it snows a lot out there. So it's like, I like places where it's cold. I like where it snows a lot. I'm a winter baby anyway, but aside from that, being from New York, I couldn't live somewhere where I couldn't have 4 seasons. That's out of the question for me. Like, there's no way I could live somewhere where I'm never wearing Timbs, or I'm never wearing a pea coat. I mean, I could probably pass on the Timbs because probably by the time I'm a certain age, they might hurt my feet. But maybe. But nonetheless, like, never wearing a coat is crazy. Like, never wearing a hoodie, no, I can't do that. That's not right. That's diabolical for me. If anything, I would move somewhere where it's never warm. I'm like the total opposite of that. I'd rather be somewhere where I don't ever see summertime. I don't care. I mean, it would be nice if sometime... I like fall. Like, I like fall a lot. So, if it warms up a little bit, that's nice. But it's like, I really don't care for like 80, 90, 100 degree weather. I could do without it for the rest of my life. I won't miss anything. So, shout out to you guys. Shout out to the chat. Chat, man. I'll be back on tomorrow, guys, early. Like I said, because a lot of things got canceled due to the weather. So you guys will see me early tomorrow. It's a good chance that we're going to rock out and do more than one live stream. Just for the sake of snow and being in the house and all the fun things. So shout out to you guys. I will be back in a couple hours. Take care of yourselves, guys. Take care of one another. Love yourselves. Love one another. Be peaceful. Tell somebody about Jesus. See you in a few. Peace.